Chapter 559. Looking at June Moxie in shock, Mei Shuiyan's mind was in a mess. No wonder she felt something was wrong when she first saw him. But she was too excited at that time and didn't pay attention. Besides, 2 days ago, he was only at the beginning stage of Shun Xian. After a few days, he became a supreme martial artist. Isn't this too much of a legend? But now, when Jun Daxiao's pure vital energy flowed into his body, Mei Shuiyan noticed it immediately. This guy, in just 3 days, jumped from the second stage of Shun Xian to the 6th stage of Shun Xian. The 5th stage was the supreme martial artist. The 6th stage was the 2nd stage of the supreme martial artist. This power was at least stronger than the solitary eagle of the grassland. How long had it been since she first met Jun Moxie in the Tian Fa forest? The first time they met, this guy's power was insignificant. He was just a small Yuxian. The second time they met, his progress was shocking. He was already at the level of Tian Xian. This kind of progress was already shocking to death. But after returning from Tiannan, he broke through to the level of Shun Xian a few days ago. This was a horrifying miracle, and the surprise didn't end. After not seeing him for a few days, he became a supreme martial artist again. What was this? A miracle among miracles. A miracle? Air. It was probably a coincidence. Jun Moxie said humbly. Besides, the skill I practice is not ordinary. Maybe it's different from yours. Mei Shuiyan suppressed the shock in her heart and sat down slowly. Was it a coincidence? Maybe it was true. Great opportunities could only be obtained in a corresponding crisis. How could there be gains if there was no sacrifice? Crisis. Only when there was danger could there be an opportunity. It seemed that he had overused his secret technique and finally caused a backlash. After he was lucky enough to get through it, it was a blessing in disguise, right? Thinking of this, Mei Shuiyan's gaze softened as she looked at Jun Moxie. She obediently allowed him to hold her hand and check on her injuries. She only felt a warm stream of air flowing into her body without any discomfort. She only felt that her internal organs were being ironed, and she actually felt a great sense of drowsiness in the midst of her drowsiness. Jun Moxie's expression became more and more solemn. Mei Shuiyan's old injury, from his point of view, was actually quite troublesome. Actually, the injury wasn't a big problem, but the real problem was that there was a cold yin qi in Mei Shuiyan's body entrenched in her heart meridian. If you want to get rid of it, it would be very troublesome, and it would be difficult to see results. Who is so vicious? Who is the owner of that cold qi? Jun Moxie asked with a gloomy face. Half-bodied. It's the divine palm of Blood Shadow. Mei Shuiyan sighed and said, It was him who had launched a sneak attack on me that year. He had struck me with the air-splitting palm, and I had been besieged. So I had to escape with serious injuries. But I realized that the palm had an extremely evil and strange power. I had been focused on escaping at that time. So I didn't pay attention to my internal injuries. So I found out that it was very difficult to get rid of it when I had to recuperate. I had tried many times over the years, but I couldn't get rid of it. But I had enough power to suppress it. So I let it be. It's this guy. I let him die so easily that day. Jun Moxie said hatefully, I should have left him alive if I had known this earlier. I would have slowly tortured him until he recovered. I would have tortured him again and again in this manner. I would have kept him alive for several years. Mei Shuiyan forced a smile. We can't do it here. Let's go to your room. Jun Moxie stood up solemnly and said, Qian Sun, you guard outside. No one is allowed to enter, no exception. This is a crucial moment for your elder sister. You must remember this. The Qian Sun Serpent Queen was shocked and quickly agreed. The two of them came to Mei Shuiyan's room. Jun Moxie's face was full of worry as he said, The treatment process this time is very simple. You just have to use pure qi to force the poison into the centrifugal meridian and let it flow along the 3-yang meridian of the hand. Finally, it will be released from the Chong meridian of the right hand. But in the process of treatment, the evil poison will inevitably flow into the 3-yang meridian of the hand. So this process will be very uncomfortable, itchy, and painful. But in this short period of time, You must not move at all, not even a bit. However, during this period of time, you must not move, not even a little bit. However, after the poison is forced out, you can sleep for a while. When you wake up, everything will be fine. Once the illness is gone, there will be room for improvement. Mei Shuiyin agreed softly. All right, since you are ready, take off your clothes. Jun Moxie said seriously, the evil qi in the body, especially the evil qi that starts from the heart, is the most difficult to deal with. If there are clothes blocking it, you will be in danger of being attacked at any time. When that time comes, it will be really bad. As he said this, Jun Dashao couldn't help but reveal a trace of slyness in his eyes. I have to take off my clothes? Mei Shuiyin's eyes widened and her face flushed red. Of course I have to take off my clothes. Jun Mo Xie's face turned serious as he said sanctimoniously, You're also a martial arts expert. Don't tell me that you still don't understand this principle. This is a must. You can't be careless. I'm a doctor now. If you don't listen to me, who will you listen to? Mei Shuiyin thought for a long time with a red face. Finally, she made up her mind and said, All right, I will listen to you. But you don't move. If you move, you are a beast. Hearing this, Junimo Xia almost wanted to howl at the sky, but he forcefully held it in and said with a serious face, Shuiyin, don't worry. I'm not that kind of person. I am definitely a gentleman. But in his heart, he added, Compared to being worse than a beast, I would rather be a beast. Mei Shuiyin snorted. In her heart, she thought, This enemy, I've already decided to be him in this life. It is destined that there will not be any changes. I was worried about him for the past few days and regretted not understanding my heart earlier. Moreover, this is treatment. What he said is very reasonable. I am the patient and he is the doctor. I should listen to him. In that instant, Mei Shuiyin found countless reasons for herself and finally convinced herself. With trembling fingers, she gently touched the silk belt on her waist. Just as she was about to pull it open, she suddenly raised her head and said angrily, You, turn around first. Jun Mo Xie let out a series of ah sounds and obediently turned around. He was secretly pleased in his heart. I won't let you look now. Humph, I'll still have to look later. Moreover, I'll be able to look as much as I want. Wouldn't I be worse than a beast if I didn't move around and look? There was a rustling sound behind him. Jun Moxie even heard Mei Shuiyin's breathing quicken. Her body seemed to be trembling slightly. After a long time, a timid voice asked, This underwear needs to be taken off too? Take it off. Jun Moxie said resolutely, This is the key. The slightest difference is the difference of 1,000 miles. The slightest difference is also the key. Don't leave anything behind. Mei Shuiyin suddenly became suspicious. Just as Jun Dashao had said, she was a martial arts expert and had seen many things. Naturally, she knew that some poisons had to be treated by taking off one's clothes. This was to prevent any obstruction from the air and the poison would return to the body. The blood shadow divine palm that she had been hit by was strange and overbearing. Perhaps it was the same. However, Mei Shuiyin knew one thing. No poisons would require the body to be naked to expel the poison. If the upper body was injured, it was enough to remove the clothes on the upper body. She just wanted a more relaxed condition. It didn't mean that she had to take off all her clothes. Jun Moxie had already explained that he only needed to circulate the 3 yang meridians of the hands. Why did she need to take off all her clothes? Therefore, at this crucial moment, Mei Shuiyin intentionally asked this question. And Jun Moxie was so obsessed with lust that he forgot everything. He blurted it out without thinking. And he said it with desire. Eagerness. That damn brat. He's worse than a beast. Mei Shuiyin was instantly enraged. She put on her clothes quickly and pinched Jun Moxie's ear. She sneered. Jun Moxie, you're really scheming. I underestimated you by calling you a beast just now. You're worse than a beast. Thinking that she was tricked by him to the point of almost taking off all her clothes. Mei Shuiyin's face turned red. She was embarrassed and angry. She pinched his ear with her right hand and twisted it fiercely. The twist was more than 90 degrees, and it was going to be 180 degrees. June Moxie squealed like a pig being slaughtered. Everything had been going so smoothly. He didn't expect to be seen through. This girl was obviously stupid. How did she become so smart all of a sudden? She even got caught in the act. This was bad. June Moxie hurriedly begged for mercy. After a long time, Mei Shuiyan's anger hadn't subsided yet. She didn't let it go. Tell me, is there a way to cure the injury without taking off my clothes? Be straightforward. I suddenly remembered that there's a method that doesn't require me to take off my clothes. It can also be cured, but the effects. June Mo Xie quickly changed his words as he felt the pain. Oomph. Is there only one way? All the methods don't need to take off my clothes, right? Will the effect really be that bad? Mei Shuiyan exerted more strength in her hands. June Moxie was in a sorry state. After a long time, the detoxification was finally successful. The meridians in Mei Shuiyan's body had completely recovered under June Moxie's care. A strong sense of sleepiness arose. Mei Shuiyan unknowingly fell into a deep sleep. June Mo Xie looked at Mei Shuiyan, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. She was as beautiful as a begonia in spring. However, he had a bitter expression on his face as he touched his ear with lingering fear. It really hurts. Even if he wanted to, he didn't have the guts. Today, he was worse than a beast. He wouldn't be a beast anymore. Chapter 560. Mei Shuiyan's old injury, the blood shadow poison palm, was actually so evil. If it had been a normal person, just a little bit of it would have caused the whole body to fester and die. No wonder even Mei Shuiyan's amazing Xian skills could not do anything about it. Fortunately, Mei Shuiyan's strength was amazing and was able to suppress it. If her skills were any weaker, she would have died a long time ago. Young Master June sighed and tiptoed out of the room. Other divine doctors had always put on airs, and great benefits had been delivered to their doorstep. But he had treated someone's injuries out of goodwill and ended up getting beaten up, even though his heart was a little impure. People were really different from each other. Over the next few days, June Mo Xie gathered all the people around him for a special training. Other than a limited number of people, even June Zhantian and June Wui participated. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun fought to be the first. June Moxie even called Hai Chun Feng and Song Shang back. The aristocratic hall was handed over to Fatty. The aristocratic hall was the #1 auction house in the capital city. In fact, it was the #1 auction house in the entire continent. Moreover, no one would dare to mess with it. The guard would sleep every day. No one would dare to behave atrociously in the aristocratic hall. Bailey Luo Yun and the other members of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer also gathered to participate in the special training. June Moxie's goal was simple: strength. Everyone's strength, or battle experience. Although the previous confrontation with the 3 Holy Lands wasn't a shameful loss, it still exposed the fact that the June family was still lacking in top-notch fighting strength. Although the June family's current strength was already at the level of a super family in the secular world, it was still far from enough. Speaking of which, the higher-ups of the June family had all taken the Tong Yuan and the other 2 pills. Their speed had undoubtedly increased a lot, but their lack of experience was also an obvious problem. Thus, they needed some time to adjust. June Moxie first gave Hai Chun Feng and Song Shang a heavenly Yuan Dan to enhance their strength. Then, he gave them a Vitality Linkage Dan and a Vitality Gathering Dan each, and asked them to protect each other so that they could quickly enhance their strength. As for Bailey Luo Yun, June Moxie's request was very simple. You must, of course, break through to the Tianxian realm within 10 days. Furthermore, he tossed out a few elixirs for him to use. Only when one reached the Sky Xian realm could he barely reach the lower limit of taking the Sky Xian pill. Only by successfully breaking through from Tianxian to Xin Xian would one be able to consume the Vitality Linkage pill and Vitality Gathering pill. This was a hurdle. With June Moxie, if you could pass, you would be able to improve quickly. If you couldn't, you could only stare at the sky, full of good stuff. It's not that I don't want them, but I'm afraid that you won't be able to digest them. It was the same for the members of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer. Because their foundations were weaker, June Moxie's orders were a little cruel. No matter how much you improve, even if you die from exhaustion, you must reach my requirements. I don't want trash. Those who are Gold Xian must reach Earth Xian by the time I return from Dongfang family. Those who are Yu Xian must reach Tian Xian. There will be enough mysterious Yang Dan and Spirit Gathering Pill. As long as you can improve, it doesn't matter how much you eat. But you must achieve my goal. This time, Feng Wanyun was able to step forward bravely in times of danger and go through thick and thin with the Jun family. Jun Mo's impression of him was undoubtedly very good. Naturally, he would not be stingy with his own people. After eating the elixirs, Feng Wanyun finally understood how Solitary Eagle could improve so quickly. He was shocked, but at the same time, he made up his mind. From now on, I will stay in the Jun family. No matter what, I will not let this stinky eagle surpass me. On the other side, Jun Zhan Tian, Jun Mu Yi, Hai Chan Feng, Song Shang, Bailey Luo Yun, and the others had gathered together. They were practicing in pairs. They were trying to experience their current speed and strength to their heart's content. Bailey Luo Yun was obviously the weakest among them, but he was a genius of the Bailey family, and he had a unique understanding of the moves. Bailey Luo Yun's improvement was the fastest among them, and his improvement was also the greatest. Solitary Eagle, Feng Wanyun, Mei Xuan, Qian Sun Serpent Queen, and Jun Moxie were at another place. They also focused on getting used to each other. Don't look at how Jun Daxiao's improvement was frightening, but he did not know why. It was the complete opposite of ordinary people. Mei Xuan, a martial arts super expert, suggested a plan to learn from each other, to learn from each other, to learn from each other. On the first day, after everyone had been assigned, everyone began to practice. Feng Wanyun and Solitary Eagle looked at Jun Moxie in confusion. Feng Wanyun was especially puzzled and asked, "This is a place for people of the supreme level to practice. What are you doing here?" Looking at this young man, he seemed to be looking down on him. Solitary Eagle added fuel to the fire and said, "I say, old Feng, this is old Jun's house. Why don't you test him personally? Just treat it as giving guidance to the younger generation." Feng Wanyun walked out unwillingly because he was actually the weakest among them. This job should be done by him. But the moment they exchanged blows, he was shocked. Jun Moxie's attack was strange, sharp, and majestic. But what shocked Feng Wanyun the most was that this kid's cultivation was actually not below his, and was even slightly stronger. Could it be that he had seen a ghost in broad daylight? Great Supreme Feng drew his sword in anger, but was defeated by Jun Moxie on the spot. Solitary Eagle was shocked. Although he knew that Jun Moxie was strong, he did not expect him to be this strong. Excited, he naturally jumped out to challenge Jun Daxiao. Thus, after exchanging 500 blows with Jun Daxiao, the two of them came to a draw. Qiansun Serpent Queen also fought with Jun Daxiao, and the result was the same, a draw. In the end, it was Mei Xuan who personally made a move. Under the situation where Jun Moxie did not use the yin-yang escape, she finally defeated this troublesome fellow. She even kicked his butt a few times and secretly commented, "You brat, you don't need to waste time. I really don't know where your battle experience comes from. You're even more experienced than a few hundred years of Jianghu veterans. Could there really be a natural genius?" After her old injuries were healed, Mei Xuan's cultivation had improved greatly. Even she had to go through a lot of trouble to deal with Jun Daxiao, not to mention others. Based on Mei Xuan's judgment, Jun Moxie's current strength was definitely above Shi Changxiao's, and was not any weaker than Li Ju Tian. The five of them took turns to fight on the stage, and the champion was naturally Mei Xuan. Occasionally, when she was excited, Mei Xuan would fight 1 against 4, causing the 5 of them to cry out in joy. During this period of time, Jun Moxie kept searching and even used his spiritual energy to check the Dantian of Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun. He even checked Mei Xuan's Dantian. Finally, he more or less understood. The fundamental difference between a supreme level expert and a Shun Xian expert, or rather, the difference between the Xianqi advancement in this world and the cultivation level in Jun Moxie's mind. Right now, in Jun Moxie's Dantian, there was a small infant. In terms of cultivation, it should be called the nascent soul stage. There was actually such a saying in martial arts. In the process of cultivation, there were occasionally people who did not know about cultivation but managed to reach this stage. It was called forming the nascent soul out of the mortal world. It was said that this was the highest stage of traditional martial arts. The only difference was that when traditional martial arts reached this stage, the nascent soul had to break out from the top of one's head and leave the physical body. From then on, it would be spiritually wandering the universe, and its whereabouts would be unknown. But in cultivation, the nascent soul would always be nurtured in the Dantian, and rarely would anyone be willing to let it out. That was the second life of a cultivator. But in this world, it was different for Solitary Eagle and the rest. Because they did not cultivate inner energy, nor did they practice cultivation techniques. But when they reached the level of Solitary Eagle, in his Dantian, there would be something similar to the breaking of a golden core, which contained a huge amount of energy. This realm should be the stage where a cultivator had broken through to the golden core stage and was about to form the nascent soul. As for Feng Wan Yun's Dantian, it was a half-solid, half-misty object, because his current cultivation was slightly lower than Solitary Eagle's. And the shape of the nascent soul core in this world was very different from what was described in the Hongjun Pagoda. It was not a shiny golden shape, but a gloomy, grayish-black object. From this point of analysis, although Xianqi could not be said to be superior to the inner energy of his previous life, it was more or less on the same level compared to humans. In Mei Xuan's Dantian, there was a snow-white Xiandan. It was the same for the Qian Sun Serpent Queen, but her Xiandan was green. Jun Moxie could not understand this. Even if the Qian Sun was still in the Golden Core stage, could it be that Mei Xuyan was only in the Golden Core stage as well? That was impossible. It was a pity that Bear King and Tiger King had already left. If they were still around, they would have two more references. And Mei Xuyan's answer solved his doubts. Once a Xian beast reached the 5th level and above, its body would form a Xiandan. Usually it was semi-solid, but after the 9th level, the Xiandan would completely stabilize and become a Dan. Any higher, the shape would become rounder and rounder, but the shape of the body would not change. Until now, the Tian Fa forest still had the Xiandan left behind by the Beast Kings and Saint Kings. According to Mei Xuyan's memories, these Xiandan were mostly round and flawless, like peerless pearls. The biggest one was like a piece of Xian jade. It was crystal clear and could be seen from one side to the other. It was bright in the night and contained an earth-shattering power. But what would happen when it was cultivated to its final form? Even Mei Xuyan did not know. Jun Moxie studied it for a long time, but still did not fully understand it. So he gave up. He felt a little regret that he did not check on the human superior supremes first, such as Huang Taiyang. What a waste. Leaving this matter aside, Jun Moxie focused all his attention on improving everyone's strength. This special training would last for a total of 10 days. Chapter 561. Today's 4th night. I've finally rushed out. Jun Moxie had always been very curious about a woman who was worthy of the White General. A woman who was deeply in love and had no regrets. A woman who had forcibly sealed herself off for 10 years after her husband's death. What kind of deep love and despair did she have to be able to do that? Dongfang Wen Xin, Jun Moxie's mother. My mother, Jun Moxie secretly said in his heart. In fact, he was looking forward to this day coming sooner. He hadn't tasted a bit of maternal love in his 2 lives. Jun Moxie really yearned for it. Sometimes when he thought about it, he would feel a sour pain in his heart. During the training, the 2 crippled children had also participated. Jun Moxie had given each member of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer a bone-tempering pill. Naturally, he hadn't forgotten about them. Moreover, he had taught them ventriloquism. In these few days, they had already made some progress. Although they still couldn't speak coherently, they could already make some indistinct sounds, just like a drunkard's murmuring One could imagine that when the two of them mastered their skills and appeared in the pugilistic world, they would definitely cause quite a stir in this world. Two mutes. Two people who didn't even need their mouths to speak, but could make sounds. That kind of expression would definitely be very interesting. Jun Moxie had only imagined it, and was already so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. However, during this process, Jun Moxie had also encountered an inconceivable matter. Yi Gohan had refused to take Jun Moxie's pills. During this period of time, Yi Gohan had been wholeheartedly guiding the two crippled children in sword and saber practice. Whenever there was a problem, he would do his best to provide an explanation. This caused the two children to improve abnormally quickly. Even Jun Moxie was shocked when he returned. He had originally planned to help Yi Gohan treat his injuries as a way of returning the favor. One had to know that Yi Gohan's body had been crippled and his dantian had been damaged. Although Jun Moxie had tried his best to treat him, the effect was still limited. Up until now, he had only recovered less than 30% of his strength. Now that Jun Moxie's strength had increased, he had the ability to help him recover completely. Yet, Yi Gohan had actually rejected him. When he rejected, Yi Gohan's expression was very calm. He only had one request. If he could create a one-armed sword technique one day, he hoped that Jun Moxie would be able to help the two children learn it. Also, he would be able to inherit his legacy. Moreover, there was no need for a master-disciple relationship. Jun Mo Xie thought about it carefully. Then he agreed. When Jun Moxie was about to leave, Yi Gohan wanted to say something but hesitated. Finally, he said, "Young Master Jun, no matter what grudges the previous generation had, I hope that you can take good care of Raimu. She is innocent, and she is a kind girl." With this sentence, Jun Moxie vaguely understood why Yi Gohan was unwilling to accept his treatment. Everyone had their own guesses about the grudges between the Jun family and the royal family, especially the death of the White Commander, Jun Wuhui, which shocked the world. And it seemed that Yi Gohan had long guessed the truth of the matter, because he himself and his family had also disappeared. He had even guessed that Jun Moxie would deal with the Emperor of Tianxiang sooner or later. At that time, where would Murong Xiuxiu go? Yi Gohan was already thinking about this. He only wanted to find a way out for the people he cared about. For example, Princess Raimu, whom he had watched grow up and saw as a daughter. The more he accepted Jun Moxie's kindness now, the harder it would be for him to open his mouth in the future. If he accepted Jun Moxie's help, he would not even have the right to open his mouth in the future. Therefore, Yi Gohan would rather be a cripple for life. He would rather be a cripple for life. All because at the critical moment, he hoped that he could open his mouth and do his best to help the person he loved, even if it was just a sentence. Although this method was somewhat demanding repayment, Yi Gohan really had no other way to make Jun Moxie owe him a favor. Although this was not considered a favor at all, but Yi Gohan also hoped that when Xiuxiu and Raimu had no one to rely on, he would have a chance to open his mouth to Jun Moxie. No matter how slim, Jun Moxie understood his thoughts, but Jun Moxie could not give any promises, so he could only leave silently. 10 days later, Jun Moxie was ready to go. This time, there was only one person with him, Mei Xuan. Jun Moxie planned to travel at full speed with light equipment. Even the Qian Sun Serpent Queen stayed at the Jun family to ensure the safety of the Jun family, and also to be prepared if Tian Fa came to deliver the medicine again. There would be someone to receive them. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun also stayed at the Jun family to focus on their cultivation. In this period of time, Song Shang and Hai Chan Feng had made great progress, successfully raising their strength to Shun Xian's level. Naturally, they were extremely excited and returned to their original positions. In Bailey Luo, Yin finally broke through the bottleneck of the peak of Earth Xian and reached Tian Xian's level under the huge pressure of the spirit medicine and fighting with Shun Xian and Ji Zun every day. Jun Moxie naturally would not go back on his words. He gave him a heavenly vitality pill, a vitality linkage pill, and a vitality gathering pill, and told him to only take it after he broke through to Shun Xian's level. On the day that Jun Moxie left, Bailey Luo Yun also quietly left the train. The two children with him were the same. Junimo Xie had asked Bailey Luo Yun to pick a few assassins and train them. But Bailey Luo Yun had spent a long time picking and had even tried to train them. But in the end, he had given up. But when he saw the two kids, his eyes lit up. After a short examination, he had decided that he wanted them. Therefore, Junimo Xie racked his brains and gave the two children two names that were full of martial arts flavor: Tian, Can, and DK. Obviously, Jun Moxie had given these two names with the intention of making fun of them. But he did not expect that a few years later, these two names would cause the entire continent to tremble. Many years later, these two names would become the two biggest taboos in the world of assassins. Somewhere in Tianxiang City, the people from the three holy lands had been gathered here for half a month. Xi Jinghong and the rest felt like their buttocks were numb from sitting. They were all very depressed, because 7 or 8 days ago, detailed news had arrived. On a certain day in a certain month, 3 supreme martial artists from the illusory Blood Sea, who were scattered along the Tianxiang to Tiannan Road, encountered the Bear King and Tiger King in Tiannan's Wufu County. Both sides engaged in a fierce battle, and the 3 supreme martial artists were beheaded and fell at the same time. The Bear King and Tiger King broke out of the encirclement unscathed. Based on the distance, they should be back in the Tian Fa forest by now. Hearing this news, Xi Jinghong immediately smashed a big rock in front of her into pieces. They had been waiting here, but they did not know that the enemy had already slipped away under their noses, and they had even lost 3 supreme martial artists. To think that they had been discussing about intercepting the enemy for the past few days, this was a real joke. The experts from the 3 holy lands had lost all face. Just like that, a few more days passed. Suddenly, another piece of news arrived. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan had left for the Dongfang family. Xi Jinghong was immediately energized. She roared, "Everyone move out. This is a rare opportunity. We must get rid of the venerable Mei." While the 3 holy lands were mobilizing their troops, Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan had already left Tianxiang City. Everyone was at ease with the 2 of them on this trip. Both of them were super experts, and their escape methods were top-notch. In this world, before Jun Moxie appeared, Mei Shuiyan's speed could be said to be number 1. But after Jun Moxie appeared, both of them were roughly on par. Of course, that was on the premise that Jun Moxie did not use any cheating tricks like the yin-yang escape. Letting these 2 people, who could be ranked in the top 3 in terms of speed, run away, even if the enemy was too strong for them to defeat, they would definitely be able to escape with their lives. Moreover, the reason why the 2 of them chose to leave was not to escape with their lives. It was to counterattack with the sharpest killing move. The 3 Holy Lands' debt had to be collected first. Otherwise, neither of them would be able to swallow this grievance. Who would be the one chasing who on this journey? This was something that could not be determined at this point. When the 2 of them left the city, the sun had just risen. This was something that Mei Shuiyan did not understand. Mo Xie, if we were to leave the city at night, it would be more advantageous for both of us. It would be the best time to reverse the situation and kill them. Why you insist on coming out during the day? When there were no outsiders around, Mei Shuiyan finally let go of her reservations and called out Jun Moxie's name. Every time this name was called out, her heart seemed to throb. How can your brain be so simple sometimes? Those fellows from the 3 holy lands are not fools. If we are too close to Tianxiang City, they will definitely not make a move. This is because the fluctuation of qi will very likely attract my master's attention. This is what they are most worried about. When Jun Moxie said this, Mei Shuiyan curled her lips in a secretive manner, but did not let him see it. Therefore, within the range of 300 miles, they will definitely not make a move. If they want to play it safe, perhaps they will have to travel 500 miles. Jun Moxie said confidently, and 500 miles of distance, even for the 2 of us, would take at least a day and a half. But to deal with you, they must choose a special terrain. Moreover, it must be a terrain that is absolutely advantageous to them. Only then would they be able to kill you in one fell swoop. Therefore, I estimate that the first wave of attack should be tomorrow night. Mei Shuiyin secretly scolded herself for being muddle-headed. She had really neglected the part about Jun Moxie's master. Although she vaguely knew that there was no such person, but the three Holy Lands did not know. Moreover, this was a target that they needed to focus on. How could they not be cautious? That's true. Mei Shuiyin nodded in agreement. This time, what are you going to do? Chapter 562. Mei Shuiyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Greed is an original sin, and the greed of humans is endless. Take our Tian Fa forest, for example. There are hundreds of Xiandan left behind by our ancestors, but not a single Xian beast has any designs on those Xiandan. You should know that we are of the same origin, and absorbing Xiandan has fewer restrictions compared to you humans. Sai, why are humans so greedy, always thinking of reaping without sowing? The essence of a Xian beast's lifetime of cultivation is all in the Xiandan. But even if you humans try to absorb it, you can only absorb half of it, or even less. Why do you treat it as a shortcut to ascend to the heavens?" Jun Mo Xie said in a deep voice, "You're right, but you're also wrong. As you said, human nature is greedy. Not to mention absorbing half of the energy. Even if they could only absorb 1/10 or 1/100th of it, there would still be people who would do it. Even if they can't absorb a single bit of it, they can still gain experience and sell it for money. So you should stop your wrong thinking. Otherwise, you will harm Tian Fa." Mei Shuiyin was silent, but her eyes flashed with a hint of resentment. Jun Mo Xia laughed heartily and changed the topic. "I've already calculated the possibility of the three Holy Lands attacking this time. I think that we only need to consider which side will be the first to attack tomorrow night. I think it should be Hermitage," Mei Shuiyin said confidently. "Zi Jinghong and Xiao Weicheng are cautious people. They will definitely not be the first to take the risk. But they will definitely hide at the side and take advantage of the situation." Jun Moxie snorted and laughed. He pointed the horsewhip in front of him and said, "After this mountain pass in front, there will be a mountain road. Now that it has been snowing for a few days, the mountain road is difficult to travel. There will definitely be some action in this mountain road. We might as well hurry up. Don't let those from the three Holy Lands rush to their deaths." Mei Shuiyin could not help but smile and agree. The two of them shouted at the same time, and the horses under them neighed and galloped away, leaving a trail of snow and dust behind them. On the wall of the Tianxiang city, Zi Jinghong's eyes were filled with a murderous look as she watched the two riders speeding away. The location of the operation cannot be too close to the Tianxiang city. In case that old monster comes out again, we will be in an awkward situation. We won't be in Tianxiang city, and there won't be any Jun family members on the way. So, he won't necessarily be afraid. Brother Z, in your opinion, where should we strike?" Xiao Weicheng stepped on the thick snow, but didn't make a sound as he floated in front of Zi Jinghong. Following behind him was Ning Wuqing, Hermitage's temporary leader. Tianxiang City, 200 miles in this direction, is the mountain road. Moreover, it was a mountain road that took half a month. During this period of time, the snow will block the mountain, so they won't be able to travel fast. So, we don't have to be too anxious. Zi Jinghong said gloomily, but Venerable Mei's speed has always been the best in the world. It won't be difficult for him to escape. So, we must choose the terrain well. Yes, we do need to consider this carefully. But if the terrain is disadvantageous to Venerable Mei, it will also be disadvantageous to us. Ning Wuqing said calmly. In a one-on-one fight, none of us here is a match for Venerable Mei. So, we must think carefully about the formation of the troops. If we can seriously injure her in the first attack, then, with so many of us, we can tire her to death with our speed. Zi Jinghong stroked his long beard and sighed. But if we want to seriously injure Venerable Mei, it's easier said than done. Without sacrificing a few lives, it's impossible. Venerable Mei is not as naive as he was in the past. I'm afraid that we will be in danger of being annihilated. Speaking of this, the three of them became silent. No one was willing to be the first to be cannon fodder, but that was for sure. Let's just draw straws. Since fate has decided, The three groups will move separately. Zi Jinghong's eyes flashed and said, the first group will choose the terrain to intercept. Whether it succeeds or not, the second group will be nearby and prepare to intercept. As for the third group, they will rush to the road ahead of time and be ready to intercept the second time. So, this cycle will repeat. Even if the third group still fails, the first group must try their best to rush to the next intercepting location. This is for the third interception. This cycle will continue until we kill Venerable Mei. Great idea. Ning Wuqing and Xiao Weiqing applauded and praised at the same time. The three of them had no more objections and came to a decision. Right in front of the two of them, Zi Jinghong personally wrote down 3 pieces of paper. The 3 pieces of paper were naturally waved, rolled into 3 small balls, and placed in the palm of his hand. Looking at the two of them, she said seriously, although drawing straws is child's play, this matter is not trivial. Drawing the first group is more dangerous, so the 3 of us must be prepared. We must not lose our harmony because of this. I will write the paper, and the other person will distribute it. This is the most fair way. Xiao Weiqing and Xiao Weicheng were satisfied with the way Zi Jinghong was handled. By doing so, Du Zhu had basically eliminated the possibility of cheating. It all depended on their luck. If they caught the first group, then there was nothing to say. Ning Wuqing smiled. Brother Zi said it well. Everyone should be a gentleman first, so that we can be harmonious. Since Brother Zi has troubled us to draw straws, I will distribute them. Brother Xiao will pick one first, Brother Zi will pick another, and the last one will be left to me. The 3 of them looked at each other and suddenly laughed at the same time. This is indeed the most fair way. Let's see who is lucky enough to draw the first group and achieve great things. After saying that, Ning Wuqing took the small paper balls from Zi Jinghong's hand, shuffled them again, and placed them on the table. The 3 of them reached out and took one each. When Xiao Weiqing took the paper balls, he looked at Zi Jinghong's expression. After all, he was the only one who had not touched the small paper balls just now. Seeing Zi Jinghong smile, Xiao Weiqing immediately felt relieved. Recalling what the 2 of them had said earlier, he could not help but look at Ning Wuqing pitifully and opened the paper balls with a smile. However, when he opened it, Xiao Weicheng suddenly choked and coughed as if he had eaten a mouthful of burning charcoal. His face flushed red. Ning Wuqing and Zi Jinghong opened their own paper balls and smiled at each other. Ning Wuqing said, I'm in the second group. Zi Jinghong smiled like the spring breeze and said leisurely, I'm afraid Blood C won't be able to do much this time, so I'm in the third group. I guess before it's my turn, the 2 of you will have already gotten this great achievement. The 2 of them cupped their fists at Xiao Weiqing at the same time and said seriously, Brother Xiao, the difficult task of the first wave of attack will be handed over to the Great Golden City. I hope Brother Xiao can succeed in one move and get rid of this big trouble. Just the thought of Brother Xiao getting Venerable Mei's top-notch Xiandan is enough to make me envious. Xiao Weiqing's mouth was full of bitterness, and he could not say anything anymore. The paper ball in his hand had 3 words clearly written on it. First group. Xiao Weiqing slowly raised his head and stared at Zi Jinghong. Ling Ling smiled and said sharply, Brother Zi, good move indeed. Xiao Weiqing was extremely depressed. Just a moment ago, he was still plotting with Zi Jinghong on how to let Hermitage take the lead while he and the illusory Blood Sea took advantage of the situation. He did not expect that in the blink of an eye, he would be forced to the front. There was something fishy about this. Even if he didn't say it out loud, it was clear that Zi Jinghong had sold him out without batting an eye. Xiao Weiqing would not believe that there was nothing fishy about this drawing of lots. Brother Xiao, what are you talking about? We are all doing this for the Holy Land, for all the people in the world. We have a long way to go, and we hope that everyone can help each other. Zi Jinghong said with a serious face and righteousness. But in his heart, he was secretly happy. This guy is so easy to fool. He even wants to scheme against Hermitage. Ning Wuqing is an astute man. Now, he is like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bough. How can he be so easy to scheme against? We have talked a lot these past few days. I am afraid that Ning Wuching has already become suspicious. If he really draws the lot, maybe he will fall out with me on the spot. Then, everything will be fine if old Ning decides the lot. Besides, Hermitage has already lost a top-notch expert, half-bodied. Our illusory blood, C, has also lost Huang Taiyong. But your great golden city has not lost any strong experts. You still want to preserve your strength? Dream on. Ning Wuching laughed and said, among the three forces, the great golden city has the most outstanding strength. I believe that the first wave of attack will be able to smoothly take down Venerable Mei. This is expected. Brother Xiao will certainly be famous in the world. Such a great achievement, and that top-notch Xiandan is really enviable. Xiao Weicheng snorted and said, is Brother Ning really so envious? Then, how about we swap? No, for such a big matter, other than having good luck, it also requires extraordinary strength. Our elusive world of immortals is currently weak, and we are a group of dragons without a leader. Even if we really go, we will only be sending ourselves to death. It is most appropriate for Brother Xiao to lead the team. I am sure that we will succeed in one battle. Ning Wuching was startled and quickly declined. Brother Xiao, didn't we agree just now? A villain should be the first to act like a gentleman. This time, the drawing of lots was fair and reasonable. Everyone was watching. Even if I really played a trick and Brother Ning transferred to another sect, it was your sect's first choice. What is the meaning of your sarcastic words? Zi Jinghong said righteously, if I, Zi Jinghong, am in the first group, I will certainly move forward bravely. In any case, I will not be so suspicious. But Brother Xiao, as the three-pearl throne of the great golden city, it is really surprising that you are so timid. If Brother Xiao thinks that it is unfair, then why don't we do it again? There is no need. Although I, Xiao Weicheng, am not an outstanding person, I know that my words are worth a lot. Xiao Weicheng Langlang said, our great golden city will do our best to carry out the first wave of the hunting mission. Brother Z, you don't have to worry about it. You and I are on our own. We will meet again someday. After that, Xiao Weicheng turned around and left. Zi Jinghong looked at him with a gloomy face as he left. Suddenly, she turned around and smiled at Ning Wuching. The white snow was dazzling. At this moment, it was already dusk of the second day. In this vast mountain range, two silhouettes were flying at lightning speed. Chapter 563. She taught with all her heart and learned with all her heart. Within a short period of time, Mei Shuiyan had improved tremendously. As a top-notch master, her high level of comprehension was very useful at this moment. She only needed to practice once, and she would be able to grasp the essence of any movement. Moreover, it was easy to learn something like a sleigh, especially for a master like Mei Shuiyan. Her body was much more flexible than an ordinary person's, and her body was light. She also had peerless Qigong. With a little more time, she could easily surpass Jun Moxie. However, even though Mei Shuiyan had learned the movement, she still pretended that she hadn't learned it. She coquettishly asked Jun Moxie to teach her again, like a little girl who was coquettishly asking her lover. Jun Moxie didn't expose her, and the two of them continued to teach and learn, enjoying themselves. The deep mountain wilderness suddenly seemed to be filled with the warmth of spring. Even the bone-chilling cold wind seemed to have become gentle and pleasant. Two silhouettes crisscrossed in the mountains, moving back and forth. They were like two shooting stars streaking across the night sky, drawing out nimble trajectories as they rapidly shuttled through the mountain forest. Mei Shuiyan had finally mastered all the techniques of skiing. She was like a child who had just received a new toy. She happily dragged Jun Moxie along to practice, laughing all the way. It was late at night. Jun Moxie chose a valley with a dangerous terrain. The valley was about 400 to 500 feet high, but it was already covered with snow. It looked like a flat plain. If an ordinary person fell in, they would probably lose their life. However, for Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan, it was like walking on flat ground. Instead, they jumped down excitedly. In the middle of the layer of snow, Jun Mo Xie activated his divine power. His palms silently pressed upwards and downwards, compacting the snow. Slowly, he made a sealed space the size of 2 houses. Although the cold wind was howling outside, the walls of the room were made of snow. It was exceptionally warm inside. It was about a few feet away from the top of the canyon. It was like a special room that appeared out of thin air. Both of them had profound qian-qi, so they didn't have to worry about breathing. However, Jun and Mo Xie still chose a few long bamboo sticks and connected them together. He then used his spiritual power to open up the joints between them and extended the other end of the bamboo sticks out of the snow. A gust of fresh air reached them, and although it was still a little stuffy, it was much better than before. Mei Shuyan looked at Jun Moxie's masterpiece in amazement. She couldn't help but be amazed. She said, "It's been so many years, but I've never thought that you could do this when it snows. Clapping your hands, you can make a house like this. Not only is it easy, but it's also very interesting. In this world, there are only things that can't be imagined, but there's nothing that can't be done." As she said that, she looked at Jun Moxie with her big bright eyes and said, "But, Jun Da Xiao, are you going to let me sleep on top of the snow? That's not possible. Even if you don't mind, my heart will ache." Jun and Mo Xie's face was solemn as he made a solemn vow. "Then, what should we do?" Mei Shuyan looked at the two of them. It seemed that she was the only one with a small bag. Jun Moxie came out empty-handed. He didn't even have a sword, not to mention a blanket. "I have my own plan." Jun Moxie smiled mysteriously. He stretched out his hand and shouted, "Change." 2 big white bear fur coats appeared in his hand. Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows and said, "What do you think? Isn't this the bear fur coat that the idiot Bear Mountain bought? How did it end up in your hands?" Speaking of Bear Mountain's bear fur coat, Mei Shuyan couldn't help but feel angry and amused at the same time. God knows what was wrong with that guy that day. As the king of bears, he actually went to buy bear fur coats. Speaking of this, Jun Moxie was a little impressed by that shop's promotion methods. Definitely a business talent. A top-notch salesman in the business market. This is all thanks to you, elder sister. That old bear didn't dare to take it away after you scolded him. So it's a good thing for me. Look at its quality. It's of the highest quality. Jun and Mo Xie smiled mischievously. Mei Shuyan didn't like it. She couldn't help but mock. "You really took advantage of it. I don't understand. That old bear obviously spent the money you gave him. What kind of logic is this? You're so proud of yourself for taking so much glory." Jun Moxie said righteously, "Your logic is the problem. Think about it. Just like how I often stew snake soup with Qian Sun. Who in this world can eat the snake soup offered by the Snake King? Who can wear the bear fur coat that Bear King bought himself? On this point, I, your big brother, am the only one who has ever done it. I am proud of myself." Mei Shuyan giggled. It had to be said that this was a little too funny. Other than the idiot Bear Mountain, no other Beast King would be able to do such a thing. Although Jun Moxie had gotten the snake from Qian Sun, it was a hidden weapon that Qian Sun had left behind when she was chasing after him. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. It was indeed a classic. He casually spread his coat on the solid snow. One coat covered the other, and it was all done. Jun Moxie gestured politely. "Wife, it's getting late. Please take off your coat and go to bed. I'm sure you'll be able to sleep well." "Ah, just these two? What about you?" Mei Shuyan opened her eyes wide. "I don't mind. I can resist the cold. Let me freeze. For you, I'm willing to freeze. It's my fault for not being well prepared and only bringing these 2 coats. For your reputation, I'm fine." Jun Moxie rolled his eyes and said in a regretful tone, "If Mei Shuyan were to say, 'How about we squeeze together?' That would be great." This young master would definitely push the boat with the current and say, "Let's squeeze together then." Mei Shuyan let out a long, "Oh," and said regretfully, "Since you're so generous and considerate, you can just freeze outside." How could Mei Shuyan not see through Jun Moxie's intentions? No matter what, she could not let this little thief have his way. "What?" Mei Shuyan's words were obviously out of Jun Moxie's expectation. His mouth opened into the shape of a duck's egg. Mei Shuyan snorted and took off her outer robe, revealing her curvaceous body. She sneaked into the 2 layers of bear fur coat. Feeling the soft fur and the warm touch, she couldn't help but sigh. It's so warm. June Moxie was speechless. How could not be warm? After a while, June Moxie hugged his arms and started to shiver. His teeth were chattering and making a creaking sound. He stole a glance at Mei Shui Yin and saw that her eyes were closed, as if she had fallen asleep. June Dashao took a deep breath and rolled his eyes. Suddenly, he started running back and forth, stomping his feet, and said, "It's so cold. I'm freezing. Oh my God! My hands are frozen. My feet are frozen. My little brother is frozen too. Help! Someone help me. Give me some warmth. I'll be grateful to him for the rest of my life." Mei Shuyan turned a deaf ear to him and was still snoring. "How can you be so unsympathetic?" Young Master June mumbled to himself. Everyone says that when a man acts like this at this moment, no matter how shy a woman is, she will still lift up her blanket and ask, "How about we squeeze a little?" But when it comes to me, it's totally different. It seems like the line in the movies and TV series is not a joke. Maybe June Dashao had overlooked it. He did not think that with his current power, he would be fine even if he was thrown into ice for a month, not to mention this warm space under the snow. If Mei Shuyan still could not see through his trick, she would be too stupid in the snow room. As time passed, a fragrant scent spread out. In this almost sealed space, Mei Shuyan's womanly scent was even more refreshing. June Moxie took a few deep breaths. His dantian was getting hotter and hotter. He did not get to take advantage of her, but instead, his face turned red. This space was not cold at all. Instead, it was so hot. Finally, June Dashao made up his mind. He took off his robe and was about to crawl into the bearskin coat. He did not expect that when he opened the coat, Mei Shuyan suddenly opened her eyes and asked sternly, "What are you doing?" June Moxie's eyes were wide open. One of his hands was still in the position of lifting the bearskin coat. He was frozen there, dumbfounded. Now he was caught red-handed. "Shui Yin, look at how cold I am. Please take pity on me. It is not easy to be outside." June Moxie begged. Mei Shuyan snorted. She was angry and amused at the same time. "It is easy for me to take pity on you. But if I do that, I will lose my chastity. How dare you say that?" She said resolutely. "Why don't I see that you are a little cold? No, go away. Before the wedding night, I will not let you pass the last hurdle no matter what." June Moxie laughed evilly. Suddenly, he exerted his strength, bent his waist, and forced his way in. Mei Shui Yin was enraged. She sat up and said, "You're really shameless. You can't win with tricks, so you use force? Do you believe that I will lock you in the world cage for the whole night?" June Moxie laughed shamelessly. "Since you also know that playing tricks is useless, then what else can I do if I don't use force? If you can bear to do it, then do it. I don't mind." He stretched his legs and said contentedly, "So comfortable." Mei Shuyan was speechless at his shamelessness. She was about to stand up and said, "If that is the case, then you can sleep by yourself." June Moxie panicked. He hugged her waist and said with a cheeky smile, "Actually, this bear's skin is quite big. No wonder Bear King bought it. It is not crowded for the two of us to sleep in it. Since we are outside, let's make do with it for the night." Mei Shuyan was still struggling, but June Moxie suddenly turned around and attacked again. Mei Shuyan made a few sounds before her mouth was blocked. After a long time, June Moxie raised his head proudly and said with a victorious tone, "Are you still going to let me sleep?" Mei Shuyan blushed. Although her eyes were a little dazed, she shook her head firmly. "I don't believe that I can't convince you." June Moxie bent down again. After a while, he asked again, "Can I?" "No." Then again, after a while, "Can you?" "If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a tacit agreement. In any case, I think so." Young Master June smiled proudly. "No, no." Mei Shuyan refused to yield to the enemy's threat. She pouted her red lips and would rather die than submit. Chapter 564. At the mouth of the Calabash. This was a mountain pass with a peculiar topography. Just as June Moxie had said, the cliffs on both sides were towering into the clouds, and there was a large basin in the middle. The two ends were extremely narrow and could only fit 3 people riding side by side. There was also a lot of snow in the valley. It had been snowing for a few days, and the wind had not stopped. Most of the snowflakes that had blown up had filled the valley, and it was at least 100 feet thick. At the mouth of the valley, Xiao Weiqing and a few experts were wearing snow-white robes, which were the same color as the snow. They were quietly hiding behind a big rock, and their eyes were like eagles looking at the path they had come from. King Xiao, we have been waiting for a day and a night. Why hasn't the target arrived yet? Could it be that they have already surpassed him? Next to him, a white-haired old man with a goat-like face and a mouse tail stuck out his mouse-like beard asked in a serious tone. Absolutely not. The two of them had been flirting with each other along the way. They were affectionate and sweet. How could they walk so fast? Maybe he's hiding somewhere and having fun right now. Behind him, another tall and sturdy man with a curly beard said while gnashing his teeth. Ah, Brother Liu, they are having fun, but you seem to be jealous. Don't tell me. You also have bad intentions towards Venerable Mei? Another person poked his head out of the snow and said mockingly, "Oomph, I just despise their beastly behavior. They are so immoral and immoral. If we don't kill them, we won't be able to appease the anger of the people. If we don't kill them, we won't be able to appease the world." The curly beard man's face turned red, and he hurriedly tried to defend himself. Don't explain. You have been staring at him since you saw him. Who can't see it? We're all men here, so who doesn't understand? Saying that the grapes are sour when you can't eat it? You're a superior supreme, yet you don't even have the courage to admit it. Another person snorted and said, Old Liu, how about we create an opportunity for you? But you have to be careful. If you die on Venerable Mei's belly, then you will be famous. Bullshit. The curly-bearded man glared at him and shouted in a low voice, I can last a long time. Everyone roared with laughter. When it came to this matter, men would never be convinced by others. This was the case for supreme beings, and this was also the case for peddlers and pawns. Suddenly, Xiao Weicheng said in a low voice, Everyone get ready. Here comes the idea. Everyone's spirits were roused, and an exceptionally tense atmosphere pervaded the air. They were joking around, but these people were extremely afraid of Venerable Mei. So, they didn't dare to look down on her. This woman was really a great enemy, and his life was in danger at every turn. The slightest bit of carelessness, and he would lose his life under her hands. Everyone looked over and couldn't help but be startled. On the road in the distance, a single woman was leisurely walking over. She was neither fast nor slow, as if she was on a sightseeing tour. However, there was only one. How could there only be one? What about the other? Where did June Moxie go? In an instant, everyone was confused. However, this was also good. After all, the only person they really wanted to kill was Mei Shuiyin. Without June Moxie, they had much less to worry about. They did not have to worry about accidentally injuring June Moxie and incurring the wrath of that old monster Feng Jueqing. However, since Mei Shuiyin was already here, where did June Moxie go? The night wind lang-lang. The night was getting darker, and the sound of the wind gradually became stronger. The narrow valley passage caused the cold wind to inevitably make an unusually shrill whistling sound when it passed through. It was like thousands of ghosts wailing at the gates of hell. Thousands of withered trees were swaying in the wind, making an unyielding sound. Snowflakes were rolled up from the ground by the strong wind, forming a hazy snow fog that connected the sky to the ground. In an instant, it had completely covered everyone's sight. Fortunately, the snow fog only lasted for a moment. Finally, it slowly dissipated. However, snowflakes started to fall from the sky again. Xiao Weicheng and the other top-notch experts who were above the supremacy level were originally calm and composed. However, at this moment, they were so nervous that all the muscles on their bodies were tensed up. They held their breath and stared at the slim figure that was walking slowly in front of them. His entire person was like a leopard that was about to pounce on its prey. The hearts of the people behind him were also tightly clenched as silence filled the air. This battle would definitely be extremely tragic. As long as Venerable Mei entered this valley, what awaited her would be the end of the road. Such a supremacy-level expert, who was at the king level, in a hopeless situation where she knew that she would definitely die. Everyone knew what kind of power she would have. Although this time, the Supreme Golden City had sent out 10 supremacy-level experts, 20 supremacy-level experts, a total of 30 top-notch experts. However, if they really wanted to kill Mei Shuyan, even with the most conservative estimation, at least half of them would have to die with her. There might even be more than 20 people who would perish together with her. Even if there were a few lucky survivors, they might not be able to escape unscathed. It was inevitable that they would be struggling at death's door. A supremacy-level expert was one level higher than a supremacy-level expert. Even the leaders of the 3 Holy Lands were only at the same level as Mei Shuyan. Even if some of them were slightly stronger, they were not that much stronger. Moreover, Mei Shuyan possessed a terrifying speed that no one in the world could match. If Mei Shuyan's first attack upon entering the valley did not deal a heavy blow, when she regained her breath, it would be the beginning of everyone's disaster. The sky was filled with howling winds, and the snow was flying everywhere on the ground. Amidst the calmness, there was an unparalleled murderous intent. In a valley, there was a total of 30 top-notch experts lying in ambush. However, there was not a single trace of them. As Mei Shuyan walked along the way, the atmosphere in the valley became more and more solemn. Suddenly, Mei Shuyan seemed to have sensed something. She stopped abruptly and looked towards the valley with her beautiful eyes. Although everyone in the valley knew that she could not see them, their hearts still skipped a beat. At the same time, they retracted all of their divine senses and restrained all of their breaths. They were like zombies hiding under the snow. The intuition of a supremacy-level expert had always been terrifying. It was especially sensitive to unknown dangers. If she had sensed something, then all their efforts would have been for naught. Suddenly, Mei Shuyan's body floated up into the air. Her slender figure soared into the air, reaching a height of more than 100 feet. Then, she lightly touched the heels of her 2 slender feet and rose another 100 feet into the air. Her body made a beautiful rotation in the air. Her left and right feet touched the soles of her feet, and shwa shwa shwa, she once again rose into the air as if she was walking on air. Everyone who saw this scene could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Was this still a lightness skill? This level of lightness skill, not to mention seeing it with their own eyes, they had never even heard of it. This was the legendary, godly level of attainment. In the air, Mei Shuyan's indifferent eyes slowly swept across the valley. Everything within a radius of 10 miles entered her eyes. Her light body slowly descended and rotated. It was as if a fairy from the 9th heaven had descended from the sky. Her posture was so beautiful that it could move one's heart. As if she did not discover anything, Mei Shuyan's originally cautious expression relaxed. She landed on the ground and looked back with light steps. Then, she continued walking towards the valley. She was here. It was finally here. She walked closer, 1 step, and another step. She was infinitely close. She was only 8 feet away from the entrance of the valley. Once she crossed this distance, it would be the line between life and death. It would be the gates of hell. However, Mei Shuyan did not seem to sense anything. Could it be that the Venerable's shocking intuition had failed to work? Mei Shuyan was still walking with light steps. She walked closer and closer. Occasionally, she would sweep the snowflakes by her hair. She did not seem to be on guard at all. Mei Shuyan seemed to sigh. She looked back again as if she was waiting for someone. She walked a few steps forward and suddenly stopped. She stood in the middle of the road alone, not moving an inch. The elites from the Supreme Golden City were so excited that their blood vessels were about to burst. However, the Venerable Mei did not move an inch. "Come in. Come in quickly. Come in quickly. Why are you not coming in quickly?" Everyone was shouting in their hearts. They were extremely enthusiastic. "Damn, there are only a few steps left. Why are you not moving anymore? This is a test of our mental fortitude." The distance was neither long nor short. It was very awkward. If anyone in the valley took a deep breath, Mei Shuyan would immediately notice it. Even if the heartbeat was a little bit faster, Mei Shuiyin would be alerted. Mei Shuiyin was still outside the valley. The sky was high and the earth was wide. Once she noticed something was wrong, she could immediately run 1,000 miles away. With her speed, even if everyone attacked at the same time, they could only eat the dust behind her. The current situation was like a drawn bow, a bow that had been pulled to its fullest extent. Mei Shuiyin seemed to have subconsciously pulled the bow into the shape of a full moon, but she suddenly stopped there. She didn't continue to exert force, but she also didn't let go. Just like that, the bow was in a stalemate. And the 30 masters of the great golden city were this bow. They stopped in the air awkwardly and did not dare to move. Finally, Mei Shuiyin made her next move. She finally took a step forward. Everyone was relieved. But then, Mei Shuiyin suddenly jumped up and landed on the trunk of a pine tree. She squatted down and sat on it lightly. Her 2 slender legs swayed back and forth in the air. She sat on the tree and looked at the path she came from. She did not move at all. F***CK. The 30 of them cursed in their hearts at the same time. What is this? Isn't she playing with us? If you want to come, then come quickly. If you want to leave, then leave quickly. But why are you making us feel like we are in a dilemma? If Jun Mo Xian knew what they were thinking, he would definitely burst into tears. Brothers, you finally know how I've been suffering these past few days. This woman's methods of pranking people are really brilliant. Even I, with my extraordinary mental fortitude, was almost broken down by her. The arrow is already knocked on the bowstring, but it can't be released. This is an extremely painful thing. You're not the only one who's suffering. Didn't I also have a stomach ache from holding it in? But Jun Moxie is not here. Chapter 565. At this moment, the evil prince's most horrifying assassination method was finally revealed to the world. This powerful man from the other world finally understood the terror of the evil prince. The current Jun Moxie had far surpassed the peak of the evil prince in his previous life. However, the people he was going to face were also the most powerful men in this world. Moreover, he was not going to face just 1 or 2 of them, but 30 of them. He was like a wisp of invisible wind drifting across the vast sky. He was also like a tangible but immaterial cloud quietly sliding down. He was also like a sparkling and translucent snowflake, soundless and traceless. He was more like a ghost of the netherworld, wandering in the void in the netherworld. His body moved through the ground, and all the aura in his body was restrained. The evil prince of China, the peerless divine sword in his hand, followed him quietly, shining with a cold light. The blood of yellow flame. There was a slow and low beating sound coming from it. Although it was subtle, it was exceptionally clear and definite. This was also the only target of Jun Moxie's assassination this time, because these supreme martial artists had already retracted their divine sense, sealed all the pores on their bodies, concealed their smell, and even stopped all the fluctuations of their thoughts. As for the turbulence of the dark force, it had already disappeared without a trace. What was left for Jun Moxie was the extremely weak pulse, which only beat once in a long time. Moreover, this was because their bodies were so close to the ground that they could only produce the slightest fluctuation. Even if their bodies propped up a little and were a finger's distance away from the ground, the beating of the pulse would disappear. But Mei Shuyin's illustrious name was so powerful that they did not dare to move recklessly for even a moment. Just like that, Jun Mo Xie stealthily snuck over, silently counting in his heart. 1, 2, 3. The Supreme Golden City's arrangement was very tight this time. Each group consisted of 3 people in a triangular formation, which was the best triangular battle formation. They were not scattered at all. Such a tight formation made it extremely difficult for Jun Moxie to assassinate them. Jun Mo Xie silently stopped his stealthy figure and pondered for a moment. Then his eyes flashed, and he closed his eyes. The corners of his mouth slightly drooped, revealing a cruel angle. He had already made up his mind, and had already formulated a plan of action. The peerless godly sword in his hand, the blood of yellow flame, suddenly became as dull as a burnt piece of wood. Even the unparalleled sharpness and baleful aura disappeared without a trace. Jun Moxie silently arrived below the three of them. In the darkness, his body paused. Without any warning, without hesitation, he raised his sword and stabbed forward. Stab! From the bottom to the top, like a black bolt of lightning, it abruptly rushed towards its target under the cover of the deep earth. This sword was a sword that could take lives, but there was not the slightest bit of killing intent. It didn't even have the slightest sense of sharpness. It was like a dry branch piercing through the air unintentionally. The tip of the sword pierced through the soil, and then the snow on the soil. Then, it silently pierced through the chest of the supreme martial artist master. The sword pierced through the heart by 1 point. Not more, not less, just 1 point. 1 point was enough. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune turned into a violent airflow and silently pierced through the tip of the sword. In an instant, the heart was burnt and the internal organs were destroyed at the same time. At the same time, the sword controlled his brain and throat. This was a foolproof plan because some masters, even if their hearts were crushed, they could still make some sounds and even make their last struggle. But now, he was destined to not struggle anymore. If he struggled, Jun Moxie would be exposed. Jun Moxie would not allow any accidents to happen. So, when the sword entered his body, it instantly controlled his brain and throat. The supreme martial artist master of the Supreme Golden City did not have any abnormalities on the surface, but his internal organs were already a pile of rotten meat. A supreme martial artist master died in such an unknown way. It was extremely unjust. One-hit kill. The black sword suddenly disappeared. In fact, the black sword basically did not come into contact with the air. Who asked the supreme martial artist master's body to be so close to the ground? The supreme martial artist master on the snowy ground did not even understand, or perhaps he did not even have the time to understand. He only felt as if his chest was bitten by a mosquito, and then he lost consciousness forever. Even until the moment of his death, he still did not understand. Why did I die just like that when I was lying there? I was still waiting to ambush Venerable May, waiting to create the great achievement of killing the first Beast King of Tian Fa. His body remained in its original position, lying on the ground in the layer of snow. It was as if he was still dutifully holding his post, but he could no longer play any role. The wound made by the tip of the sword was narrow, like a red mark made by a tree branch. Blood rushed and condensed in his body, filling up his entire abdomen. But from the wound, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Jun Moxie did not stop and quickly retrieved the blood of Yellow Flame. There was no trace of blood on the edge of the sword. It was still as dark as before, but Jun Moxie clearly felt that there was an obvious excitement in the sword in his hand. Or maybe it was an illusion. Jun Moxie actually felt that at this moment, the divine sword and the blood of Yellow Flame were connected to his mind, and there was even a subtle feeling of a blood connection. After killing people, the blood of Yellow Flame was watered by the blood of the supreme martial artist master, and it stimulated the bloodthirsty nature of the sword. Just like at this moment, the murderous intention in Jun Moxie's heart could no longer be suppressed. The king of assassins, Xie Jun's first assassination in this different world was actually 8 months after he transmigrated, and there was a supreme martial artist master. This starting point could not be said to be low. Jun Moxie moved silently. What he killed just now was only the leftmost part of the triangular formation, and it was only the beginning of tonight's massacre. Now, Jun Moxie's target was the person on the right, only a distance of 2 feet. The person at the tip of the triangular formation, Jun Moxie, temporarily did not move, because the person at the tip of the triangular formation was a supreme martial artist master. Jun Moxie did not have the confidence to assassinate him silently, so he decided to get rid of the other 2 helpers first. In this way, even if the supreme martial artist master finally reacted when he was attacked, he would still have killed 3 of them, which was better than killing 2. Shwa! The tip of the sword silently pierced into the soil, into the layer of snow. The long sword craftily moved up again, and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune silently exploded in the body of the master above, destroying. Then it silently retracted. Under the ground, June Moxie stood with the sword in his arms and quickly took 2 breaths. If anyone were to see him, they would definitely see that his face was flushed red. These 2 swords looked simple and easy, but in actual fact, it was extremely difficult. Whether it was the direction, angle, or the speed of the attack, the rapid input of tyrannical energy, and then the instantaneous control. If there was a mistake in any of the links, it would directly lead to failure at the last step. After all, the target of the assassination was a supreme martial artist master. Other than concentrating all of his energy, Jun Moxie also had to concentrate all of his energy, chi, and spirit, without any distractions in his heart, in order to execute this soundless, murderous, and unpredictable killing move. As long as there was a slight flaw in any of the links, with the strong vitality of a supreme martial artist master, opening his mouth and letting out a scream was definitely the simplest thing to do. But Jun Moxie could not let him let out a scream, not even a little bit. Just like that, 1 man and 1 sword, 2 swords to kill 2 supreme martial artists. This caused a huge loss to Jun Moxie's energy, chi, and spirit. Now, he was trying to recover in the shortest time possible. The next target of the sword was a supreme martial artist master. If he wanted to kill them silently, he had to be more careful. In front of the valley entrance, Mei Shuiyin sat quietly on a big tree. She looked back from time to time, and it seemed like she was waiting impatiently. All the supreme martial artists who were hiding in the dark saw this scene, and they naturally understood. If not, why didn't we see that little thief Jun Moxie? This girl must be waiting for her little lover. No wonder she was so restless. But we really don't want to kill your little lover. We only want to kill you. Don't worry, you will definitely be fine. Come in quickly. If you come in, everyone will be free. Don't play with us anymore. Everyone was praying sincerely in their hearts. Mei Shuiyin sighed softly, and there seemed to be some hidden bitterness on her face. She raised her pretty face and looked over. That beautiful face of hers was faintly tainted with a layer of faint worry, and everyone couldn't help but feel pity for her. Another sigh. Mei Shuiyin seemed to be in a very low mood, and she looked back reluctantly. Suddenly, her body moved, and she floated down from the tree. She seemed to be in a daze, and she walked towards the valley. Phew! You finally came. That was really worrying me. Mei Shuiyin walked forward for 3 to 4 feet, and then she stopped in a daze. She looked back again. Then, she stood in the middle of the road with a heavy heart. She didn't move again. Mother of asterisk her. She didn't move again. Xiao Weicheng and the others almost spat out a mouthful of blood. My dear grandma, what are you doing? I know you have never been in love before, but you don't have to do this, right? Even if you rush over, we will let you kill us. This is too torturous. Just come over, and everything will be free. Whether you live or die, you die and I die. Just give us a quick death. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Mei Shuiyin stopped for a while, and then she suddenly turned back and walked back the way she came. After a few steps, she turned back and walked a few more steps. She kept pacing back and forth, and coincidentally, she didn't want to cross the minefield no matter what. Damn it! Everyone cursed in their hearts. Even Xiao Weicheng, who was above the great master level and had hundreds of years of cultivation, almost went crazy. How could there be such a thing in the world? All of the experts from the great golden city seemed to be burning with impatience in their hearts without any exception, but they didn't dare to move at all. What was going on? What was going on? Why didn't you just not come? We wouldn't be so anxious even if we didn't see you. But you came. Why don't you go a little further and let us have the guts to move a little? But you are so close to us. You have a worried look on your face, but we are 10,000 times more depressed than you. So depressing. So depressing. Where did your little lover go? Chapter 566. Mei Shuiyin took a few more steps and suddenly stood on top of a snow-covered mountain rock. She raised her eyes and looked into the distance. She recited softly, "The plum's beard is not as white as the snow, but the snow is not as fragrant as the plum. What a great poem! It must have been hard on him to come up with such a good poem. Could it be that this poem was written for me? In her line of sight, there was a red plum blossom in full bloom. It was especially dazzling in the pure, white snow. The bearded man beside, Xiao Wei Chung, had a bad temper. This time, his nerves went up and down, tensed and relaxed. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead were bulging. He felt a dull sound coming from his stomach. He almost spat out blood. Looking into his body, he realized that he had suffered internal injuries. This old man is suffocating. It's so torturous. I beg you, young Master Junimo Xie, who has disappeared without a trace. Please come quickly. It looks like if you don't come, this little lady will not come, and no matter what. Underground. Junimo Xie had already adjusted himself to his best condition. His eyes were still closed, and they were still closed, because even if he opened his eyes or revealed a sharp gaze, it would attract the vigilance of a superior supreme expert. He just closed his eyes and slowly walked around the ground, silently arriving below the body of the superior supreme expert. Once again feeling the slight pulse, Jun Moxie gritted his teeth, and the blood of yellow flame pierced forward like lightning. Earth split, snow split, shwa. The blood of yellow flame easily pierced into the man's heart. Two parts of the heart. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune flowed in unstoppably. At the same time his organs were destroyed, his dantian was also damaged. The internal energy had already rushed up to his throat. It controlled his movements and voice. Jun Mo Xie only felt a slight vibration from the sword. Then, a sharp spiritual force followed the sword and struck back. Jun Moxie secretly exclaimed, "That was close." If he had been the slightest bit careless, this sword could have killed him, but he would definitely have the strength to struggle, shout, or even counterattack. Even so, now that he had successfully taken control of his entire body, his remaining mental power was still able to counterattack. Although the final counterattack was powerful and incisive, the expert who was above the level of a supreme martial artist had, after all, lost the life force that he relied on to survive. This final spiritual attack could at most cause a little trouble for Jun Moxie, and there was nothing else. The long sword retracted with a whoosh. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh. Finally, he had successfully killed 3 people in a row. However, the 2 supreme martial artist experts did not retaliate, even though they had all died in an instant. Only the last expert, who was above the supreme martial artist level, was able to retaliate at the last moment before his life was extinguished. Even if it was a counterattack of mental power, it couldn't be underestimated. What did this mean? What did it mean? Jun Moxie silently activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune and penetrated into the body of the expert above the level of a supreme martial artist. When he reached the dantian, he was shocked to discover that there was no golden elixir in this person's dantian. Instead, there was an extremely blurry nebula. It was obviously a strange shape after being destroyed by his own sword aura. Jun Mo Xie tried to restore them to their original state, and was finally able to confirm that these little nebulae were the product of the original pill-shaped object. It seemed that it was really different. According to the basics of cultivation, the golden elixir was the foundation of transforming the elixir into a nascent soul. But here, it had become a blurry nebula. Why was that? Jun Moxie's mind raced, and he immediately left this position without stopping. He rushed to the next ambush spot, the next triangle formation. Now was not a good time to analyze the cultivation method. It was more important to finish this battle quickly. Amidst the silence, 30 people were waiting to ambush Mei Shuyan, and Jun Moxie was quietly carrying out the assassination. After 3 successful assassinations, Hitman Jun had summed up a certain amount of experience. Even if it was a supreme martial artist or someone above the level of a supreme martial artist, as long as the method was correct, he could kill them all the same. The entire plan was perfect. First, Mei Shuyan would appear and create a strong pressure in front of the enemy, so that the enemy would not dare to act rashly. Then, Jun Moxie would be in charge of the assassination. This was the strategy that June Moxie had formulated. Facts had proven that this strategy was extremely useful, and the results were quite brilliant. Mei Shuiyin had only quietly stood a few feet away and had already successfully attracted 200% of the attention of the Great Golden City's experts. In their minds, the biggest threat was Venerable Mei. As for June Moxie, these experts did not care about him at all. In their group, they believed that any random person could easily transform June Moxie into 16 different appearances. Therefore, they did not even consider where June Moxie had gone. Even if they did consider it, they would only think about why this kid had not come over yet. If he came over, then Venerable Mei would also come over. Even if they were beaten to death, they would never have thought that someone could actually blend into the ground so perfectly to kill people. This was simply something that they would not even think about. But such a bizarre thing had happened in silence, and continued. The person that they had looked down on the most had caused them huge casualties, and it was an irreparable flaw. Moreover, it was done in a situation where they were completely ignorant and completely silent, and the person that they had been guarding against with all their might did not make a move at all. In fact, he did not even have the intention to make a move at all. He just blindly walked over and then walked back again. This was equivalent to letting them be slaughtered with their hands tied. This was a great irony. Killing people invisibly was the evil prince's true method. Mei Shuiyin seemed to be leisurely walking back and forth, but her palms were covered in cold sweat, because Mei Shuiyin also did not know what June Daxiao was doing. It had been almost 2 hours. Why hadn't June Moxie come out yet? There was no movement in the valley, either. Whatever arrangements had been made should have been made long ago, right? Was it too difficult? Or was there an accident? Mei Shuiyin made up her mind, turned around, and walked towards the direction of the valley again. At this moment, suddenly, a weak moan unexpectedly sounded from within the valley. Everyone was startled. All the people present were experts in killing. Which one of them did not kill hundreds or thousands of people? Naturally, they were not unfamiliar with this kind of dying sound. This sound was clearly made by a person who was on the verge of death. He was in extreme pain, but he could not make too much noise. His trachea was completely blocked, and he had to use all his remaining strength to make a sound like the trachea was being ventilated. 200% of the people who made this kind of sound were already dead. They could not be saved. What was going on? What the hell was going on? Xiao Weiqing's face changed, and he suddenly felt a trace of danger. He no longer cared about hiding his body. He slapped the ground, and his body was the first to jump up. On the ground where he was lying just now, a section of the pitch-black tip of a sword appeared, and then retracted, disappearing without a trace. The ground was restored to its original state, but the tip of the sword was incomparably fast. Xiao Weicheng did not see anything strange at all. Even he himself suddenly felt that his heart was very uncomfortable, as if a powerful sword had pierced into it, and his heart meridians were already damaged. If he had seen it, he would have definitely discovered that the position where the black tip of the sword came out was exactly where his left chest was on the ground, life and death in an instant. The minute of the netherworld. Mei Shuiyin's pretty face was filled with anger. She laughed coldly and looked at Xiao Weicheng, who was still in midair. She said lightly, "So if it's you, Xiao Weicheng of the Great Golden City, you have been lying in ambush for a long time, right? The three Holy Lands really can't wait to kill me." Xiao Weicheng wanted to open his mouth to speak, but he felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. Suddenly, he raised his head in midair and spat out a mist of blood. Only then did the pressure on his heart ease, and he floated down to the ground. Xiao Weicheng did not answer Mei Shuiyin's words, but he had a sincere feeling that something was wrong. The pain in his heart just now was obviously caused by someone injuring his heart meridians. But how did this injury happen? Was there anyone else injured? What did that dying cry just now mean? Mei Shuiyin did not walk into the gorge. Could it be that there was something fishy about this? Thinking of this, he finally became suspicious. He looked back into the gorge and suddenly shouted, "There's no point in lying in ambush. Everyone, get up and welcome the arrival of Venerable Mei." There was indeed no point in lying in ambush at this time. The others did not know why a 3-stars king level master like Xiao Weicheng would suddenly soar into the sky and expose himself. They did not even know why he would spit out blood in the sky. Everyone was full of questions. When they heard Xiao Weicheng's call, they came out one after another. The snow rolled, and people in white quietly appeared. They stood in the snow and faced Mei Shuiyan. Their eyes were full of murderous intentions. However, Xiao Weicheng's complexion changed. His complexion turned as white as the snow in an instant. Even his lips were slightly trembling. The so-called calm demeanor of a supreme-level master was nowhere to be found. It was because he kept counting. 1, 2, 5, 8, 12, 14. When he reached the 14th person, he did not continue counting, because no one else had come forward. He knew that he could not have counted incorrectly, but he could not help but count again. It was still 14 people. There were only 14 people. That meant that there were only 15 people, including himself. Where are the other 15 people? Where did they go? Xiao Weicheng shouted. Where are they? Everyone get out here. Show yourselves quickly. When he shouted these words, he felt his whole body turn cold. The weakest of them was a supreme-level master. There was no reason that they could not hear him. If they heard him, they would definitely come out. But why did they not come out? Xiao Weicheng hoped that the others would choose to lie in ambush, even though he knew that this hope was very slim. Following Xiao Weicheng's thunderous shout, the snow on the mountain peak fell down. The ground also seemed to shake a few times. But still, no one came out. Xiao Weicheng's complexion changed. His originally pale face was now almost ashen. Suddenly, he flew as if he was flying. He slid over 100 feet like lightning. He clapped his hands, and the snow on the ground flew up. It was a mesmerizing sight. Amidst the flying snow, 3 straight bodies were shaken up by this force. Then they fell down stiffly. Xiao Weicheng felt as if he had been splashed with cold water. His whole body turned cold. Today, I got into a super suspenseful situation. I still have lingering fears. I woke up at noon and was very hungry. So, I put the water caltrops I bought yesterday into the pot. I turned on a natural gas and cooked it. Then I went to write. Then I forgot about it, until I felt a burning smell everywhere. I looked everywhere. I looked in the ashtray, the rubbish bin. I didn't find anything. Then I remembered, oh my God, the kitchen was on fire. The freshly painted walls were all black. I put out the fire in a hurry. The natural gas valve was broken. I couldn't turn it. The hose was burnt. The pot was melted. Mom scolded me like crazy. Chapter 567. 3 bodies fell onto the snowy ground, causing the snow to fly up. They turned over and revealed their faces. Their eyes were bulging and their faces were twitching, but they were stiff and motionless. 1 superior supreme and 2 supreme martial artists. A total of 3 top-notch experts had actually died silently at some point in time. Such experts were killed without making a single sound. The facial expressions of the 15 experts from the Supreme Golden City changed drastically. Xiao Weicheng's figure did not stop. He flew quickly and arrived at another place. Another 3 corpses were flipped out in another place. Another 3 cold corpses. 15 corpses were turned over one by one. Xiao Weicheng suddenly stopped moving and stood in the canyon. The 15 corpses were placed around him. Xiao Weicheng's mouth twitched. His face was as mournful as a ghost, and he was dumbstruck. Suddenly, Xiao Weicheng roared towards the sky. He roared. No one knew what he was roaring for. It seemed to be an unconscious cry, a scream of pain that pierced into one's heart. That meaningless roar showed the extreme grief and anger of the Supreme Golden City's 3 Pearls King. Who is it? Come out if you are a real man. Xiao Weicheng's hair stood up in anger. Xian Qi was everywhere, and the crown that tied his hair suddenly exploded. His grizzled hair danced ferociously in the air. He roared again. Which son of AB** TCH is it? Using such a despicable and shameless method to sneak and attack. Come out and accept your death. A stream of blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. The extremely mournful cry shook the heavens and the earth, echoing through the mountains. At this moment, Xiao Weiqing was mad with grief and anger. He no longer cared about the demeanor of an expert. He simply shouted and cursed. However, the surroundings were silent, and there was no response. Xiao Weiqing took a deep breath and roared again. Son of a B***tch, butcher, cold-blooded executioner. Come out if you have guts. What kind of hero are you if you only rely on sneak attacks? Come out for this old man. There was still no sound. Xiao Weiqing's chest was filled with depression. He couldn't help but let out another long howl. His howl was long and mournful. It was endless, and the sound shook the sky. The snow on the surrounding mountain peaks trembled and suddenly slid down the mountain peaks. The rumbling sound was like the arrival of doomsday. Under the vibration of his howl, several mountains had avalanches at the same time. The snowy waves rolled down with the power of nature. It was as if it was going to devour the heavens and the earth. The snowy fog rose a few hundred feet into the air, like the waves of the sea, rolling over. The group of experts all dodged, except for Xiao Weiqing, who did not dodge at all, allowing the snow to bury him. Just as the force of the snow lessened, Xiao Weiqing, who was at the bottom of the snow, let out a mournful cry. Once again, he broke out of the snow and shot into midair, screaming mournfully. The corpses of the 15 experts were completely buried under the snow of the mountains. Mei Shuiyan's eyes were also twitching. She really didn't expect that Jun Moxie's arrangement would actually achieve such a glorious result. It was really too shocking. Mei Shuiyan believed that Jun Moxie would be able to assassinate her over a long period of time with his current strength and ability to appear and disappear mysteriously. But in a short period of 2 hours, he killed 10 Supreme Masters and 5 Superior Supreme Masters. And he didn't even make a sound. This was a miracle. Outside the valley, on the way, Jun Moxie ran over, panting. He carefully avoided the snowy waves and shouted, "Wife, wife, are you okay, wife?" I was scared to death. I suddenly heard someone shouting and causing an avalanche. I was halfway through relieving myself. I was so scared that I almost pooped my pants. Mei Shuiyan was angry, amused, and shocked at the same time. She scolded, "Shut up. Don't you find it embarrassing?" When Xiao Weiqing's body landed, he landed 8 feet away from Mei Shuiyan. One was still inside the valley, and the other was outside the valley. He stood solemnly. His face was gloomy and terrifying. His eyes were like a pack of bloodthirsty wolves, flashing a faint green light. He fiercely looked at Mei Shuiyan and clenched his teeth. He was extremely resentful as he said word by word, "Venerable Mei, good move. You are really vicious." Vicious? Mei Shuiyan frowned. What vicious move? Did I do anything? Could it be that this scene in front of us is not your doing, Venerable Mei? Xiao Weiqing suddenly roared with blood in his eyes. 15 of my brothers who have been with me for 100 years were assassinated without a sound. Venerable Mei, aren't you too cruel? You're so despicable and vicious. You call yourself the Lord of Tian Fa? You did it, but you don't have the guts to admit it. Isn't that beneath your status? Mei Shuiyan snorted coldly and said, "Xiao Weiqing, you call yourself the 3 Pearls Throne of the Great Golden City. It was really a joke to say such words. I said I didn't do anything, so I didn't do anything. You still have the face to question me? I want to ask you, if the 30 of you are not here to deal with me, then what are you trying to do?" Xiao Weiqing snorted heavily and stared at Mei Shuiyan without saying anything. "You can't hide it from me. You arranged such a vicious trap to deal with me. Is that what you should do? A few of your men died, and you scold me for being despicable and vicious? Xiao Weiqing, you have the face to say that. I really wonder if you don't have a brain, or if your brain has mold growing in it." Mei Shuiyan looked at him disdainfully and said, "Other than yourself, I really can't think of anyone else to use words like despicable and shameless. I don't want to quarrel with you. Who did it? Hurry up and ask him to come out." Xiao Weiqing said fiercely, "I want him to pay with his blood." Xiao Weiqing. Senior, I understand now. Your logic is that only you can kill others, So it's reasonable for you to arrange a vicious trap? If others counterattack against your trap, then it's despicable and shameless? Is that what you mean? Jun Moxie curled his lips and looked at Xiao Weicheng with contempt. Of course. Xiao Weicheng raised his head and shouted, "Everything that the great golden city does is for the common people of the world. Making an enemy out of us is the same as being deranged, unforgivable. All of our methods are just and honorable. Fighting back against us is treason and heresy. That means standing on the opposite side of humanity. That's a dead end." "Ha ha, that's funny." Jun Moxie laughed and said, "So killing your allies without reason and plotting against others is also fair and just for the world, for the common people. Is there any method that cannot be used? No matter how despicable the method is, as long as it's for the good purpose, then there's a clear conscience." Xiao Weicheng snorted heavily. "You're using it as a reason. You're really shameless. Does the great golden city still have any shame? No, your great golden city must have stuck half of its face on the other half. Half of you are shameless, and the other half is shameless." Jun Moxie cursed and spat out a mouthful of saliva. Xiao Weicheng suddenly turned around and looked at Jun Moxie fiercely. He pointed his finger and said coldly, "Jun Moxie, don't think that you could be lawless just because you have a master as your master. If you provoke me, I'll grind your bones and scatter your ashes. You must know that there are some things that you can't say and some things that you're not qualified to do. Now, shut your stinky mouth for this old man." Jun Moxie snorted, rolled his eyes, and said, "What if I don't want to?" Xiao Weicheng took a deep breath and suddenly turned around to look at Mei Xuan. "Venerable Mei, you're also a master of your generation. Today, I won't deny that I did it to ambush you. But now it's impossible. I'll only ask you one question. Who was the one who did it this time? Among the people who died today, there's no lack of participants in the war for seizing the heavens. Don't tell me you don't know what this means." He looked at Mei Xuan with a fiery gaze. It was as if fire was about to shoot out of his eyes. Mei Xuan snorted coldly and said, "I've already said that I didn't do anything. Naturally, I don't know anything. How would I know who the culprit is? Don't tell me that I'm responsible for every person who dies in this world. What a big joke." Xiao Weicheng, if you want to start a war, then hurry up. If you don't, then scram with your tail between your legs. Participate in the war for seizing the heavens? This venerable is also participating in the war for seizing the heavens. Why do you want to deal with me? Xiao Weicheng stared at Mei Xuan. He didn't pay attention to her words. Suddenly, he roared like a bolt from the blue. "Is it Chu Chihuan? Chu Chihuan?" Jun Moxie and Mei Xuan looked at each other in astonishment. What kind of logic is this? Why is this matter related to that Chu Chihuan? Jun Daxiao was especially unhappy. "Motherf asterisk her, you idiots! In this world, besides Chu Chihuan, is there no one else who can kill people? Why are you thinking about that? Can't you think about it? It's me, evil monarch Jun Moxie, who did it." But as soon as Xiao Weicheng said this, the other 14 people from the Supreme Golden City showed a look of agreement. Yes, in this world, if there was someone who could assassinate so many experts without a trace, then there was no other person besides Chu Chihuan. Even the masters of the 3 holy lands could only fight these experts head-on. Killing people without a trace like this was impossible. This was purely in the field of expertise. Although everyone thought that even Chu Chihuan might not be able to do this, in fact, there were many flaws. But in this world, besides this supreme assassin, there was no one else who could do this. Coming and going without a trace, killing people without a trace. This was the supreme assassin Chu Chihuan's signature move. Chapter 568. Jun Moxie couldn't help but laugh and said, "I say, what does this have to do with Chu Chihuan? Do you 3 holy lands always accuse innocent people without any reason? I don't even know the king of assassins. I haven't even seen him. What kind of reasoning is this? You're making this up." Jun Moxie laughed wickedly as he said this. "Chu Chihuan is a good person? Ha ha! This is a big joke." Xiao Weicheng looked up to the sky and laughed. His face was full of grief and indignation, and his expression was ferocious. He said, "He's a cold-blooded butcher. His body is full of sin. His hands are stained with blood. He only recognizes money and doesn't recognize people. If he was given money, he would even dare to kill his own father. How can you say that he's a good person? June Moxie, do you have any sense of justice in your heart? Do you have any sense of justice? Did I wrongly accuse him? June Mo, Xia, this sentence of yours is a blatant attempt to hide something. If you didn't collude with him, would you have exonerated him?" Xiao Weicheng said angrily. "It must be Chu Chihuan. From today onwards, the great golden city and Chu Chihuan are irreconcilable enemies." June Moxie and Mei Shuyan looked at each other. They didn't expect that there would be such an unreasonable person in this world. He had dragged the supreme assassin into this. What the hell is this? If the supreme assassin, Chu Chihuan, were to hear this, he would spit out a mouthful of blood. How can I bear all the crimes? Is there any justice in this world? I shouldn't be called the supreme assassin. I should be called the supreme black walk. June Moxie still remembered that when he was following the cold-blooded master, Lei Wu Bei used to think that he was the supreme assassin, Chu Chihuan. Could it be that the movements of this world's apex king assassin were actually so similar to his own? He just didn't know who was more brilliant and who was the real king of assassins. Mei Shuyan sneered. "Xiao Weicheng, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for your great golden city. A person with such shallow knowledge and experience is making a rash judgment. What a joke in Jianghu." Xiao Weicheng sneered. His face was filled with hatred. He looked around and roared, "Chu Chihuan, since you have the guts to kill people, why don't you have the guts to come out and see this old man?" There was still no movement. June Moxie laughed with infinite mockery. Mei Shuyan snorted coldly and walked forward. Now, the Supreme Golden City only had 5 superior Supreme Masters and 10 Supreme Masters left. Mei Shuyan didn't care about this kind of power anymore. Even if she couldn't kill them all, she could at least retreat safely. Moreover, she had June Moxie to help her, so she was even more fearless. So, Mei Shuyan just barged in. The 2 Supreme Golden Cities experts blocked the road with red eyes and shouted, "The matter is not clear yet. Venerable Mei, please stay for a moment." Mei Shuyan Lang shouted, "The matter is not clear yet? Why don't I think so? Get lost." The 2 experts were furious. Suddenly, their swords flew out like lightning. The shadows of the swords were like the billowing clouds and the angry sea. Suddenly, they flew into the sky, and 2 round swords, one on the left and one on the right, flew towards Mei Shuyan. They were already aroused by the death of their comrade. When they heard Mei Shuyan's impolite scolding, they didn't stop there. They didn't even greet each other and directly used the pinnacle of swordsmanship, body and sword as one. They rushed towards her. Mei Shuyan turned her wrist, and a long sword appeared in her hand. She shouted coldly, and the light from the sword spread out. The entire sky was suddenly filled with countless fiery trees and silver flowers. The light from the sword was like cold lightning, and it shot out in all directions without any hesitation. These 2 people didn't know what was good for them, so Mei Shuyan wouldn't show any mercy. "Since you guys have body and sword as one, then I will cut you in half." Once the sword was raised, not only did it kill, but it also cut them in half. Xiao Weicheng shouted, "Stop." After seeing the 15 corpses, Xiao Weicheng had completely given up on the idea of ambushing Mei Shuyan. He knew that with his current strength, ambushing Mei Shuyan would only result in death. Even if the remaining 15 people were all killed, the most they could do was to seriously injure Mei Shuyan, and that was the most conservative estimate. Right now, Xiao Weicheng only wanted to capture the murderer who killed his brother, Chu Chihuan. As for dealing with Mei Shuyan, he would leave it to hermitage and illusory blood sea. Therefore, he had no intention of intercepting them. When he saw the 2 supreme martial artists attacking Mei Shuyan recklessly, he couldn't help but be shocked and hurriedly shouted for them to stop. But it was all too late. After being enlightened by Jun Dashao, Mei Shuiyan understood the righteous way of a gentleman, so she couldn't tolerate it anymore. With a long whistle, the sharp light from the sword shot out. Suddenly, two cries of pain could be heard. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. Blood rained down from the sky, and the two long swords were broken into pieces. The two supreme martial artists, upon contact, were cut into countless pieces dead. Mei Shuiyan floated down. Her white robe was spotless, and there was not a single trace of blood on it. Her face was even colder, and her murderous aura suddenly surged, enveloping the entire area. Xiao Weiqing was about to speak, hoping to ease the conflict. After all, it was too disadvantageous for the great golden city to attack at this moment. The advantage of the ambush had been completely destroyed, and their strength had been reduced by more than half. After such a huge change, the morale of their men had been taken away, and they no longer had the will to fight. On the other hand, Venerable Mei had easily taken the lives of two supreme martial artists, and his murderous aura was at its peak. Moreover, there was a super killer, the supreme killer Chu Chihuan, who could launch a sneak attack at any time. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for the great golden city. Without waiting for Xiao Weiqing to speak, Mei Shuiyan had already turned her head and stared at him with her cold but unusually clear eyes. A deep and grand pressure rose like a hurricane and shrouded all the 13 people from the great golden city. This was a majestic aura that only a king could have, and it was a bitingly cold aura that held the power of life and death. It was an unparalleled, domineering aura that looked down on all living beings. At this moment, as the peerless demeanor of the number one person in Tian Fa, Mei Shuiyan's real strength was fully displayed. Under such a grand and majestic aura, the words that Xiao Weiqing was about to say were blocked in his throat. He could only feel that the cold and awe-inspiring gaze had shone into the depths of his heart and had firmly locked onto his soul. For a moment, Xiao Weiqing felt as if his whole body had fallen into an ice cave, and he had actually forgotten his original intention. In front of him were the bloody corpses of his two subordinates. But at this moment, Xiao Weiqing had actually forgotten about his desire for revenge. There were still his 12 subordinates behind him to help him. But at this moment, Xiao Weiqing had also forgotten to summon them to help him fight. He only knew that Mei Shuiyan, who was in front of him, seemed to be able to bury him forever in this snowy land with just a raise of her hand or a stomp of her foot. Mei Shuiyan looked at him coldly and said lightly, "Xiao Weiqing, you'd better not speak anymore. If you dare to say another word, I will kill all 13 of you here and bury you here forever. Do you want to bet on whether or not I dare to do it, and whether or not I can?" Mei Shuiyan's voice was very soft, and her tone was even calmer, as if she was merely stating a fact of the past. But the meaning behind his words was enough to make one tremble with fear. Dare to do it, and whether or not I can. How domineering was this? Under such a shocking and boundless aura, even the wind and snow in the sky seemed to have stopped in the void. Of course, although Mei Shuiyan's strength was shocking, it was not enough to change the natural changes between heaven and earth. The earth was just an illusion, and even though the wind and snow did not stop, everyone's heart could no longer feel it. The only thing that could be felt was Mei Shuiyan's domineering aura. Deep like the sea, majestic like the mountains, cold sweat broke out on Xiao Weiqing's forehead. He tried his best to gather all his spiritual consciousness and Xian Qi to fight against Mei Shuiyan's horrifying aura. He tried his best to free himself from the whirlpool of her aura, but he could not do it. Mei Shuiyan looked at him for a while and laughed mockingly. She then turned to Jun Moxie and said, "Let's go." Jun Mo. Xia laughed heartily and walked over in a relaxed and happy manner. The two of them walked side by side into the canyon. Their pace was neither fast nor slow. It was so casual and natural. There were a total of 13 peak experts behind them. Any one of them would be able to catch up with them in a single leap. However, not a single one of them made a move. Looking at the silhouettes of the man and the woman in front of them, everyone's expression became extremely complicated. Was the difference in their strength that huge? How could it be? Back then, when 10 superior supreme experts ganged up on Mei Shuiyin, she was merciful and did not kill them. Under the situation where she was beaten up on all sides, she still managed to escape. Now, Mei Shuiyin was not as merciful as she was back then. She did not show any mercy at all. Every time she attacked, she would use her killer move. But what was sad was that there were only 5 superior supreme experts and 10 superior supreme experts left on her side. With this kind of strength, coupled with the fact that they were in a disadvantageous position, it was simply impossible for them to kill Mei Shuiyin. It was more likely that they would be annihilated by the opponent. When a gentleman could no longer be deceived, the person who tried to devise a plan would definitely have a bleak ending, especially when this gentleman's strength was extraordinary. The facts had proven this inference. The silhouettes of Mei Shuiyin and Jun Moxie finally disappeared on the other side of the gorge. The snow in the sky seemed to be playing along, and it started to fall heavily. The wind blew on Xiao Weiqing's face, and it was very cold. But no matter how cold it was, it could not be compared to the coldness in his heart. Everyone, let's go. Xiao Weiqing let out a long sigh. This super strong person who was above the Supreme Master level lowered his head sadly and silently moved his feet. In an instant, this 3 pearls throne of the Supreme Golden City seemed to have suddenly aged a few decades. Even his one straight back seemed to be a little hunched. Chapter 569. Xiao Weiqing heaved a long sigh. He looked at the corpses on the snowy ground in a daze. He closed his eyes and said sadly, "This place is remote. It's not convenient to move them. For the time being, let's bury them here. This day will come sooner or later. But King-level Master, we can't let go of Mei Shuiyin and Chu Chihuan like this." The gray-bearded old man fiercely gritted his teeth. Tears slowly flowed down from his eyes and streaked across his face. He was so angry that he choked with sobs and said, "King-level leader Xiao, the bones of my old brothers are still warm. Corpses are not cold yet." Xiao Weiqing looked at him mockingly. "How can corpses not be cold in such weather? So what if their corpses are not cold yet? Do you remember to say this now? Why didn't you say this when Venerable Mei was here? If you were so hot-blooded, why didn't you rush to avenge your brothers? Look at how leisurely those 2 people are walking. They probably haven't gone far. If you want to avenge your dead brother, you can chase after them. I can make the decision to fulfill your desire to avenge your friend. Do you dare to do it?" The white-bearded old man's face turned red. He was embarrassed and angry. His eyes widened in horror. "King-level Master Xiao? What do you mean? Were you very awe-inspiring just now? Do you think I am the only one who can avenge my brothers? Do you think I dare to do it? If I am alone, even if I catch up with them, I am not strong enough. What's the point? You know you are not strong enough? Then why are you asking me? I am doing this for the Supreme Golden City. Do you think I can care about your feelings at this moment? Bastard." Xiao Weiqing was furious. "You know the consequences of what happened just now. I know it. How could those who were lucky enough to survive not know? I didn't bring all of you out of Gold City to bury all of you here. You're asking me why I didn't deal with Mei Shuiyin? Don't you understand? Why are you shouting at me now?" The people from Hermitage and Illusory Blood Sea were waiting behind them, and we've already lost 17 people without even knowing why. 17 top experts. If we continue to fight here, what will the consequences be? Have you lost your mind? Are we going to allow Gold City to suffer losses while the other 2 holy lands reap the benefits and suppress us from then on? You only know how to yell. Can't you consider the bigger picture? He suddenly squatted on the ground and covered his face with his hands. Murky old tears slowly flowed down his face. For the death of his brother, and for his cowardice just now, send out the Golden City order. Order the whole world to hunt down the supreme killer Chu Chihuan. Xiao Weiqing took a deep breath. The veins on his forehead were twitching. He was trying his best to control his emotions. But the more he tried to control it, the more his voice trembled Kill him at all costs. If Chu Chi-huan knew the whole story, he would probably spit out a mouthful of blood in grief and indignation. He wouldn't even need the supreme golden city to hunt him down. He would just kill himself, yes. Everyone agreed after a moment of silence. Heavy snow swirled in the air. In this spacious valley, there were now 17 more uninhabited graves, silently standing behind a mountain rock. Xiao Weicheng and the rest of them paid their respects with tears streaming down their faces. They were trembling and gritting their teeth in grief and indignation. But more than that, they didn't know what to do. They left dejectedly, but they kept looking back. The snow had covered their footprints, and the world was once again a vast expanse. The falling snowflakes gradually covered the tombstones that had no tombstones. The wind suddenly blew, and the ground was once again a flat snowfield. There were no more bloodstains. As if nothing had happened, the disciples of the pugilistic world died under the saber, and the heroes of the pugilistic world died under the sword. They used to be strong, they used to have glory, they used to dominate the world, and they used to rule the pugilistic world. Now, they only returned to a pile of yellow soil, and they could only leave an approximate position. They couldn't write their names, because they had too many enemies. Some would definitely come to dig their graves to vent their hatred over the past 10,000 years. Who could be an exception to such an ending? Shui Yin, you were too impressive just now. When can I be as impressive as you? That would be great. Zhu Moxie laughed. He pushed the sleigh and caught up with Mei Shuyan. He said, just a simple stand and 13 people. A whole 13 top experts. All of them were so scared by you that they didn't dare to move. So cool. Ha ha. One of the 3 holy lands, the Great Golden City, was actually scared out of their wits. So funny. You have underestimated the people from the Great Golden City. They were not scared out of their wits. They only did this to divert the trouble. Mei Shuyan smiled faintly. Since ancient times, the 3 holy lands have always kept each other in check. Their strength was almost the same. The Great Golden City lost so many experts in this accident. How could they be willing to do it? Actually, with their remaining strength, they're still able to fight with me. Even if they all lose their lives here, I will definitely have to pay the price of serious injuries. However, in this way, it will only benefit the other 2 factions. How could they be willing to sacrifice themselves for others? They were not willing to be the only one to suffer losses. They wanted to keep us alive to harm the Hermitage and the illusory ocean of blood. So they would not make a move. They would rather swallow their anger. I have also considered this, but in the end, they were not strong enough. If they had the confidence, they would have already attacked you. The reason why they did not make a move, other than to divert the trouble, was because they were afraid of your strength. You know, even though we could still cause a lot of casualties to the Hermitage and the illusory ocean of blood, the reputation of the Great Golden City would be lost. After all, they had lost the courage to start a war. This, I am afraid, will be the biggest stain on Xiao Weicheng's reputation. Zhu Moxie laughed. He raised his eyebrows and said, it will become a demon in his heart. If you meet him in the future, you only need to mention this matter and mock him. That will be enough to break his state of mind. Make him angry. Anger will lead to confusion, and confusion will lead to death. Zhu Moxie smiled coldly and cruelly. So, you must tell this to Bear Mountain. This might be a great weapon to deal with Xiao Weicheng. Between them, there will be a time when they fight. Mei Shuyan's eyes brightened. She said, not bad. You humans are really cunning. She turned her head and looked at Zhu Moxie carefully. She smiled and said, but this time I found that you have changed a lot. Really? Did he become even more handsome and confident? Facing such a handsome young master, do you want to throw yourself in his arms? This young master is very learned. Zhu Moxie rubbed his face and looked very arrogant. I'm being serious. After this assassination attempt, you've gained a sense of coldness and fierceness. Mei Shuyan looked at him carefully and said with certainty, this has never happened before. But I have a feeling that this feeling that has never appeared before is deliberately hidden by you. It will only appear when there is a need to use it. June Moxie was startled. He smiled and said, "Is that so?" Mei Xuyan suddenly stopped and said, "Yes, this is the feeling. When you smiled just now, it had that kind of strange charm." She furrowed her brows and thought hard about what to say. She said, very cold, very indifferent, but dangerous. But it's different from the murderous aura of an ordinary person. You have a bloodthirsty aura in your bones, a very dangerous aura. June Mo Ciel laughed heartily, but in his heart, he knew that Mei Shui-Yan's feeling was undoubtedly correct. This assassination had indeed brought him countless memories of the past. The familiar steps, the familiar feeling, the familiar atmosphere, the familiar mood. The moment he made his move, June Moxie felt that he had returned to his previous life. He became the assassin in the Golden Triangle, assassinating corrupt officials in the city, assassinating traitors abroad, that carefree, lawless, evil monarch. The evil monarch. After 15 top experts died in his hands, the killing intent in June Moxie's soul had finally returned. This killing intent was not a killing intent. This was the killing intent of an assassination. The killing intent of the evil monarch. But it was not the killing intent of June Moxie. As he thought about it, June Moxie let out a long sigh. The current you, no one can see through you. No matter if it is an outsider, your family, or friends, no one is an exception. Mei Shuyan stood beside him quietly for a while. Suddenly, she smiled and said, "Sometimes you are like a rascal, like a hooligan. But sometimes you're like a cold warrior. Sometimes you're like a poet. I still don't understand. How did you come to have so many contradictory personalities? And how did you switch back and forth so easily? If it was someone else, I'm afraid they would have had a mental breakdown." June Moxie smiled deeply and looked into the distance. He said lightly, "It's nothing much. It is just me adjusting myself. It is really not a big deal. I am such a person. I have no choice but to do this." Some time ago, when the June family was on the verge of collapse, I did not dare to reveal my true strength. I could only play with my life. After a while, when the June family stabilized, my hands were stained with blood. June Mo Xie smiled faintly and said, "After a person has gone through a massacre, there will always be something else on their body. Or rather, there will be an invisible and strange feeling. I call this feeling killing intent. The more people they kill, the stronger this feeling will be, especially when they meet strangers. It will make them feel frightened. This is too easy to expose. It is also not good for family and friends. Naturally, I need to use some methods to hide it." Chapter 570. Secondly, it is to disperse the murderous aura on your body. With this kind of murderous aura, if you want to assassinate others, it is simply courting death. Experts can sense this kind of murderous aura. So, a successful assassin will always look more ordinary than an ordinary person. Those who have a murderous look on their faces are mostly small characters that are not worth mentioning. My way of releasing pressure and adjusting my murderous aura is different from other assassins. I do it according to my own temperament, whether it is frivolous or frivolous. In short, as long as I can release it, then it is a successful balance. There is no specific method. A specific method of releasing pressure is also a flaw for an assassin, a fatal flaw. So, an assassin who can be seen as an assassin with one look is no different from an idiot. And those who think that an assassin should have a cold face and a rigid look are a bunch of idiots. Furthermore, he's a brainless idiot. June Moxie smiled, but I believe that when I don't kill, no one will recognize me as an assassin, and a super assassin at that. In this aspect, I think I am successful. And this foundation is that I am usually relaxed, frivolous, and frivolous. Do you understand now? I don't understand, and I don't understand even more. Mei Xian frowned. The murderous aura and the principles of an assassin. I can understand them all, but the only thing I don't understand is, how can you be an assassin? And a super assassin? Why do you always put yourself in the perspective of an assassin? You are obviously a young master of an aristocratic family, and you are only 18 years old this year. Everyone has seen your past. How can you relate to being an assassin? Eh. June Emosia was left speechless for a while. I had been so happy a moment ago that I had actually neglected this point. How could he explain this? I've killed people. Isn't that an assassin? June Moxie argued irrationally, and then immediately changed the topic. Shuiyin, in your opinion, should we rush at full speed? Or should he take his time? If we rush at full speed, we should be able to surpass Xiao Weicheng and the others. If we slow down, I'm afraid they will overtake us. At that time, how should we deal with it? Mei Shuiyin rolled her eyes at him. She knew that he was trying to change the topic, but she did not expose him. She simply said, this time, the great golden city has suffered a great loss. According to the situation where they are fighting openly and secretly, they should not inform the next group of people about the real situation. They might even mislead them. Isn't that even better? Isn't that our chance? June Moxie smiled thoughtfully. Opportunity? What opportunity? Mei Shuiyin was smart. She immediately understood June Dashao's meaning and said, you mean pretending to be injured? Yeah, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger is the true way of a king. June Mo Xie said in a serious tone. Dealing a fatal blow to the enemy while they are still in a state of surprise is a great achievement. You humans are too cunning. Mei Shuiyin laughed. This was another mountain pass. Although it was not very steep, it was the only way. This was undoubtedly another perfect place for an ambush. At this moment, the leader of Hermitage, Ning Wuqing, was standing at the entrance of the valley. His white robe was the same color as the snowfield. His long beard fluttered in the wind. He looked like he was going to ride the wind. His face was full of righteousness, and he looked like an immortal. Behind him, 28 top experts were divided into 2 rows, sitting quietly behind the mountain rocks. They did not hide their tracks. They only used the mountain rocks to cover their bodies. It was impossible to hide from the divine senses of the experts. It was as if they were hiding from the wind. When he thought of Xiao Weicheng, who had just walked past this place, Ning Wuqing wanted to laugh at his misfortune. There were 30 people from Great Golden City, 30 top experts. After the battle, there were only 13 left. Moreover, the leader, Xiao Weicheng, seemed to be seriously injured. Although he tried his best to hide it, Ning Wuqing could see from his pale face that the battle was tragic. The more miserable the better. This was really satisfying. Let's see how you're going to show off. When you are miserable, we can take advantage of you. Ning Wuqing said that he was concerned, but in fact he was asking about the battle. Xiao Weicheng said angrily, you will understand when you see Venerable Mei. I wish you success in this battle. Then, he led his people and left in a hurry. Ning Wuqing felt great in his heart. Do I have to see Venerable Mei to understand? Now it is very clear. You've lost more than half of your men. Even if Venerable Mei's skills are exceedingly high, it's impossible for her to achieve such a result without suffering any injuries. Moreover, the injuries will be very serious. 5 Supreme-level experts were sacrificed, and 10 Supreme-level experts were killed. Even the 3-stars King-level expert, Xiao Weicheng, was seriously injured. If such a huge price was not paid in exchange for Mei Shuiyin's serious injuries, there would be no justice, and it would be the biggest joke in the world. Back then, the 10 of us almost killed her. Not to mention now, we have rested and built up our strength. Venerable Mei is seriously injured, weak, and exhausted. Therefore, after Ning Wuqing surveyed the terrain, he felt that there was no point in setting up an ambush. Moreover, it would be a loss of Hermitage's magnanimous demeanor. This place isn't small, so there are plenty of opportunities to dodge and move around. We only need to set up an ambush until Venerable Mei arrives. I presume that she is seriously injured. Ha ha ha. Won't such a peerless skill fall into my hands? No wonder Xiao Weicheng looked at me in such a strange way before he left. So it was jealousy. Therefore, Ning Wuqing was very relieved. After all, there was no longer anything to worry about. I can successfully kill Venerable Mei under my command. Then it won't matter if Half-Body dies or doesn't die. In fact, it will be one less target for me to fight for. The heavens are helping me. Two figures slowly approached from afar. Mei Shuiyin and Jun Moxie were getting closer and closer. Ning Wuqing waved his hand, and everyone concealed themselves. Then, Ning Wuqing stood firmly behind a rock. Ling looked at the two people who had just arrived. She carefully observed them, and the corners of her mouth curled into a smile. Jun Moxie hadn't been injured. This was obvious. After all, how could a great master like Jun Moxie, who was so weak, enter his eyes? However, he had a good master, so no one would dare to touch a single hair on his head. Mei Shuiyin seemed normal at first glance. She didn't have the slightest injury on her body. Even her clothes were as white as snow. Her complexion was rosy. However, Jun Moxie was looking at her from time to time with a concerned look on his face. It seemed as if he was very worried. In fact, it could be seen that Jun Moxie was deliberately slowing down his pace. This is reasonable. With Mei Shuiyan's status, she wouldn't lose her composure no matter how heavily injured she was. This is the pride of a great master, and it can't be changed. If Mei Shuiyin had come with her clothes in tatters, her face pale, and her body full of injuries, Ning Wuqing would have suspected that her injuries were fake. Ning Wuqing would only believe that under such calmness, his own sharp eyes could find a flaw in it. This woman who has been awe-inspiring for a lifetime is really injured at this moment. If she wasn't injured, if she didn't suffer any serious injuries, with Mei Shuiyin's strength, Jun Moxie wouldn't have been worried about her. Ning Wuqing's heart is finally at ease. The two of them had arrived at the mountain pass. Venerable Mei, we meet again. It's been a while. How are you? Ning Wuqing laughed out loud. His white robe fluttered in the wind as he stood on top of the mountain rock. His sharp eyes were smiling as he looked at the man and woman who were a few feet away from him. It was as if everything was under his control. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyin suddenly stopped. Mei Shuiyin looked at Ning Wuqing and smiled. Ning Wuqing, you're really like a ghost that won't go away. Do you really think that I can't bear to kill you forever? The war for seizing the heavens is indeed a protective talisman. But this talisman also has its limits. Venerable Mei Xian's skills are unparalleled, and his heart is vicious. I don't have any friendship with Venerable Mei. Venerable Mei will naturally be willing to kill me. I don't think I'll get lucky. Ning Wuqing chuckled. He looked at Jun Moxie, who had a worried look on his face. He shook his head and said, But if Venerable Mei is so confident, why is your little lover so uneasy? Could it be, Venerable Mei, you're injured? Then he said, It's no wonder. The Supreme Golden City lost 17 experts in one go. I guess Venerable Mei is not having it easy, right? But you can actually kill 17 top experts in one go. This kind of peerless skill is really admirable. I can't catch up to you. Jun Moxie's face was full of worry and anger. He stepped forward and looked impulsive. He gritted his teeth and pointed at Ning Wuqing and shouted, The Supreme Golden City is despicable and shameless. They actually hid in the snowfield and plotted against Shuiyin. Unfortunately, they've harmed themselves in the end. Karma is not good. They finally returned in defeat. Ning Wuqing, don't tell me that you, with the name of hermitage and the prestige of a superior supreme, want to take advantage of others when they're in danger? Young Master Jun, you don't know. I didn't take advantage of others when they're in danger. Ning Wuqing said warmly, I'm just taking advantage of beasts when they're in danger. He looked at Jun Mo Xie with some pity in his eyes. Then he said in a soft voice, Young Master Jun, you mustn't forget that this stunning beauty in front of you is a wild beast. Young Master Jun is a famous teacher, and your future is limitless. But you're so captivated by beauty. It really makes me sigh. Jun Moxie was so anxious that his face turned red. He stepped in front of Mei Shuiyin and opened his arms. He said angrily, No matter what you say, no means no. If you have guts, kill me first. Chapter 571. Fourth update. Mei Shuiyin looked around and smiled faintly. It's still those people. Ning Wuqing, you haven't asked for help. You think you can stop this venerable with just these people? Isn't that a little too whimsical? Ning Wuching replied in a calm manner. These people might not be enough in normal times, but they should be enough now. Venerable Mei, I'm sure you won't deny what I said. He turned his head and looked at Jun Moxie. Then he spoke in a gentle manner. Young Master Jun, this old man was in your good graces that day at the aristocratic hall. So, I owe you a big favor. So, I took a bone-tempering pill first, and your master also gave us a way out in the Jun family. He didn't attack us. I will always remember this friendship. And we, the Hermitage, have never wanted to become enemies with your master. So, I have a few words from the bottom of my heart. I wonder if the young Master Jun is interested in listening to them? What words? Jun Moxie looked at him vigilantly. Then, he said nervously, Speak. He looked like an extremely nervous young man. He wanted to protect his lover at all costs. In fact, he looked so real that even Mei Shuyan almost burst out laughing. This guy's a genius. He can act like a dragon and act like a tiger. He's really good. The young master is handsome and elegant. Your family background is rich. Your Tianxiang's noble title is hereditary. Your status in the Jianghu is that of a super family. There's no need to doubt this. Your future prospects are boundless. You will become a dragon among men once your wings are fully grown. You will soar to the sky. Ning Wuching spoke in a tone of deep regret. Then, he continued in a sincere manner. If the young master wishes to find a good wife, there are many beauties in this world. They can come and go as you wish. But why would the young master waste his youth for a Xian beast that isn't of our race? You should know that humans and beasts walk different paths, and in the end, there won't be a good ending. Don't look at this woman's fairy-like appearance, but in the end, she's still a profound beast. What do you mean? Jun Moxie was puzzled. Can't I marry her? Is it a sin for me to marry her? It's not just a sin. Young Master Jun has let down the Jun family's ancestors. Ning Wuching said earnestly, Young Master Jun, for the past 10,000 years, there have been many Xian beasts who have taken human form. But has young master ever heard of any Xian beast marrying a human? That's true. However, just because they didn't exist in the past didn't mean that they didn't exist now, and it didn't mean that they wouldn't exist in the future. In this world, there are only things that you can't think of, but there is nothing that you can't do. Man can conquer nature. Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows. Let me be the first in history. What's wrong with that? This isn't a question of whether it's possible or not. It's a question of one's own bloodline. Ning Wuching said solemnly, You should know that when humans become husband and wife, they will naturally give birth to children. When Xian beasts form a pair, they will also give birth to little Xian beasts. This is the law of heaven and earth, and cannot be changed. But when humans and Xian beasts become husband and wife, will they give birth to children? Or will they give birth to a Xian beast? It's true that Venerable Mei is already transformed into a human, and is even more charming and enchanting. I believe that there are very few people in this world who can resist her seductive charm. But young Master Jun must not forget that even if she were to cultivate for another 30,000 years, she would still be a wild beast in her bones, and absolutely not a human. The offspring she gives birth to can only be Xian beasts, and not normal babies. Such a demoness. Why not get rid of her as soon as possible? What's the point of keeping her around? Mei Shuyan's expression changed drastically. Her face turned paler than the snow. Her delicate body also started to tremble slightly. Ning Wuching's original intention of saying those words was to separate the two of them and to further attack Mei Shuyan. But he did not realize that his words, whether intentionally or unintentionally, had touched upon the thing that Mei Shuyan was most worried about, the thing that she was most afraid of, even though she knew that his intention was to sow discord, to separate the two of them, and to attack Mei Shuyan, but Mei Shuyan was still shocked. Ning Wuching himself had suffered from a broken heart in love, and had been alone his entire life. But he deeply understood the word love, and it was a very harmful thing. Mei Shuyan had trained hard for hundreds of years, and had never had the slightest thought of love. It could be said that her heart was as calm as still water. But the more a person was like that, once they fell in love, there was no cure. As the saying goes, when an old house is on fire, there is no cure. If Ning Wuqing could persuade Jun Moxie to leave Mei Shuiyin, then whether Mei Shuiyin was injured or not, she would inevitably lose her rationality and lose her mind. Her fighting strength would also drop, and she might even die without a fight, not to mention that she was seriously injured. Ning Wuqing Lingling looked at the change in Mei Shuiyin's expression and was overjoyed. He knew that he had touched her sore spot. "Do you have anything else to say?" Jun Moxie's expression calmed down, and he looked coldly at Ning Wuqing, his hands behind his back, and his voice became emotionless. As the saying goes, honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. I know that young Master Jun doesn't like to hear it, but I have no choice but to say it. Young Master Jun, you must consider it carefully. You must know that the Jun family has a good reputation and is considered a heroic family in Tianxiang. If people were to find out that their only descendant married a Xian beast as a wife, it would inevitably become a big joke. Or, what's even more frightening is that after a year and a half, if the Jun family succeeds in giving birth to a child, then that's fine. But if they give birth to a little fox or a little tiger, then the Jun family's reputation will be greatly damaged, and they will be disgraced. Young Master Jun, how will you face the Jun family's ancestors if that happens? Ning Wuqing looked at Jun Moxie with a pained expression, and it seemed as if he could already see the embarrassing situation that the Jun family would face. He sighed and said, "There are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. Young Master Jun, you must think thrice before you act. If you insist on doing things your own way, and you end up becoming a huge joke. Young Master Jun, it is not that this Ning's words are too harsh, but this Ning is wholeheartedly thinking for young Master's sake. Let me ask you, if young Master were to take this Xian beast as your wife, what is the difference between that and your own dogs and cats? You mean, I need the approval of the 3 holy lands to marry whoever I want?" Jun Moxie looked at Ning Wuqing in a cynical manner. "Ning Wuqing, have you gone senile?" Ning Wuqing didn't get angry. Instead, he sighed bitterly and said, "Again, honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. I'm thinking for the young master. I'm thinking for the Jun family's future. This old man's sincerity can be witnessed by the heavens and the earth. The young master may not understand it now, and may even be extremely disgusted by it. But you'll certainly understand this old man's painstaking efforts in the future." Mei Shuiyin's body started to tremble. She looked at Jun Moxie with a pair of distressed eyes. Her eyes had already become somewhat hazy. Ning Wuqing's words had undoubtedly dealt a fatal blow to Mei Shuiyin. She could even feel her heart shattering bit by bit. Her lover was slowly drifting further and further away. From the time Ning Wuqing had spoken these words, his ice-cold expression and the stiff expression on Jun Moxie's face, Mei Shuiyin had felt sincere despair. Bearing children was a wonderful thing in the world. But if the child was a Xian beast, this was something that no family in the world could accept. This was simply an absurd and bizarre story. How could the Jun family and Jun Moxie be an exception? Before this, he was only infatuated with her appearance and that warm feeling between the two of them. But once he understood the future of this matter, it was inevitable that Jun Moxie would make a different choice. If he made the so-called rational choice, then Mei Shuiyin felt her entire body turn cold. She stood there, but it was as if she was the only person in the world. Chapter 572. Ning Wuqing's face was ashen and his eyes were spitting fire. "Jun Moxie, you are really stubborn. You will regret it one day. A man marrying a beast is the biggest joke in the world and will ruin the Great Tang. It seems that the Jun family's name will become infamous throughout the world in the future. This matter is set in stone. Even if the Jun family stinks and falls, even if I really give birth to a Xian beast. Ning Wuqing, what does that have to do with you?" Jun Moxie glared at him and said with some bewilderment, "Ning Wuqing, you are neither my son nor my grandson. What are you worrying about? Are you even qualified to worry about it? I'm really curious. You guys don't do your proper business, and instead come to meddle in my family's affairs. Are you so damn bored that your balls hurt? Ning Wuqing's body trembled, and he suddenly roared. You are really infuriating this old man. Oh, I know, I understand. Ning Wuqing, is it because your wife is dead and you are single for the rest of your life? Do you want others to be single for the rest of their lives? Jun Moxie said sharply. But there are still many normal people in this world. Everyone wants to hug their wife, to sleep, and snuggle into the warm bed. There are definitely not many people like you who refuse to find a wife and go to the brothel to earn money. Ning Wuqing, you still have the face to talk to me about being unfilial and not having a descendant. Even if I give birth to a Xian beast after my marriage with Shui Yin, it will still have the surname Jun. But what about you? After you die, will there still be someone with the surname Ning? How miserable, it will be very difficult to find a Xian beast to bury for you. Ning Wuqing was so angered by Jun Moxie's words that his hands and feet were trembling. His face was ashen, and his eyes seemed to be particularly wild. Jun Moxie was still holding Mei Shuiyan's waist. He lowered his head and pinched her little nose lovingly. He smiled softly and said, Wife, did I enjoy scolding this old thing? Do you feel like you vented your anger? If you think it's not enough, I'll continue scolding. This is your husband's forte. Even if I'm not number one in the world, I'm still in the top 3. Mei Shuiyan smiled gently with tears in her eyes. She leaned her little head against his chest and drew circles with her slender fingers. She said softly, Are you speaking the truth? Jun Moxie said seriously, If there is any lie in my words, may the heavens strike me with lightning. 10,000 swords will pierce through your body, and you will die a horrible death. Before he could finish, his mouth was covered by a small hand that emitted a sweet fragrance. He looked down and saw Mei Shuiyan's beautiful eyes filled with tears. Her 2 big eyes stared deeply at him through the tears. She said word by word, I believe you. Jun Moxie smiled slightly and finally relaxed. He put his forehead against Mei Shuiyan's smooth forehead and said gently, If you believe me, then I am really not afraid of anything. God knows how terrible your face was just now and how much pain I felt. If you leave me, I really can't live anymore. Without you, what is the meaning of life? Jun Moxie sensitively felt that Ning Wuqing's words had left an indelible shadow in Mei Shuiyan's heart. Therefore, he did not hesitate to use his own life to dispel Mei Shuiyan's worries. Although it was a bit mushy, but women were willing to listen to it. Mei Shuiyan choked, and her tears fell like pearls, soaking Jun Moxie's shirt. She sobbed and said, I won't leave you. Jun Moxie felt relieved and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. Mei Shuiyan's body trembled. She raised her head and looked at Jun Moxie. She smiled with tears in her eyes. They were surrounded by strong enemies. This pair of children were actually in the midst of strong enemies. They were deeply in love with each other, as if there was no one else around. Ning Wuqing finally regained his breath and roared, What a pair of shameless and ungrateful bastards. Everyone, let's get rid of this pair of evildoers. Jun Moxie hugged Mei Shuiyan and whispered in her ear, Wifey, how are you now? If you haven't completely calmed down, you can watch from the side. Watch how your husband fights these clowns. Don't force yourself. Mei Shuiyan looked at him with a smile and said, I'm not that weak. As long as you don't change, how can I be defeated by others? If you fight alone, I can't be at ease. When she said the last sentence, she couldn't help but lower her head shyly. Jun Moxie laughed out loud. He heard the whistling sound behind him and the sound of blades cutting through the air. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. 2 white figures turned around at the same time. 2 dazzling lights suddenly lit up. Mei Shuiyan's sword of the king and Jun Moxie's blood of yellow flame were unsheathed at the same time. Dense sword chi soared into the sky. Ding, ding, ding. After a series of crisp sounds, the sword light dimmed and brightened again. Jun Moxie's white figure suddenly disappeared in the dazzling sword light. When the sword light dissipated, Jun Moxie was nowhere to be seen. Mei Shuiyan's figure was like lightning. She was actually able to find the only gap in the frenzied attacks of the swords and sabers and easily slip past them. She was like a wisp of invisible wind. Even if she occasionally came into contact with the sabers and swords that were slashing towards her, she would still be able to easily slip past the sharp edges of the blades. However, the king's sword in her hand was not gentle at all. These top experts of the elusive world of immortals had been playing with swords for their entire lives. Each of them was an expert in this field. Moreover, they had already learned that Mei Shuiyan's sword was a rare divine weapon in the world. At that time, several of them had suffered great losses. Not only were their weapons broken, but they had also lost an arm. This caused a sharp decline in their combat power. Until now, they had not been able to recover. Their strength had been reduced by more than half. Now that they saw Mei Shuiyan using the same trick again, how would they dare to fight her head-on? All of their swords were focused on the break formula. When they saw that their attacks had failed, they all retreated. Mei Shuiyan's white robes fluttered in the wind. Her sword was like a dragon, pointing south and attacking north. Everyone was intimidated by her unparalleled reputation and the peerless sharpness of her divine sword. They retreated step by step. For a moment, it became Mei Shuiyan who had the advantage of being outnumbered. The reason why Mei Shuiyan was able to achieve such a result was not only because of her own strength and the sharpness of her divine weapon, but also because there were too many of them. There was no need to look for a target. Wherever her divine sword passed, there were enemies. She only needed to fight. Although the Hermitage's side had 29 top experts, there were only 3 or 4 of them who could actually fight with Mei Shuiyan at the same time. There were too many of them. Their hands and feet were tied, and they couldn't fight to their fullest. Ning Wuqing saw that the situation was not favorable for him. His face darkened. He understood the reason behind it and immediately shouted, "Hu Menglong, you will lead your 3 brothers to attack. The rest of you retreat for now. Split into groups of 4 and take turns to attack. As soon as the situation becomes critical, attack immediately. The moment the second group attacks, the first group must retreat immediately. Those who have not participated in the battle form a slightly larger encirclement outside the battlefield. Be prepared for her to abandon the battle and escape at any time. If there's an opportunity, call out to Enchantment." There was a whistling sound in the battlefield. Most of the people immediately retreated, leaving only 4 people to surround Mei Shuiyan and continue the battle. 4 snow-white long swords were like snowflakes, stacked layer upon layer. They were like lightning flashing across the sky, shooting out cold streaks of electricity in all directions. Mei Shuiyan's breath was long and steady. Her body was soft and graceful as she floated around. It was obvious that she was at ease and at ease. She did not panic at all because of the opponent's tactic of taking turns to attack. Use your inner strength to fight. Collide. We have the absolute advantage in terms of numbers. It is to our advantage to exhaust her. Ning Wuqing shouted from outside the battlefield. "Hu Menglong, are you stupid?" She must have sustained serious injuries from the battle with the Supreme Golden City. Even if she is not injured, she must have used up a lot of her inner strength. Why are you still using weapons to attack? Use your palm strength. Use your Xinqi. Force her to fight with brute force. Increase her exhaustion, wear her down, and trap her to death. Hu Menglong was the other superior supreme martial artist of the Hermitage. He was one of the 3 people who were fighting alongside him. After they came to the Hermitage, the 4 of them became brothers because of their mutual affinity. Since then, they often practiced martial arts together. After almost 100 years, their minds were faintly connected and their tacit understanding had reached the point of perfection. At this moment, when the 4 of them attacked together, they unexpectedly felt their hands and feet being tied. They were all greatly shocked. Although everyone knew that Mei Shuiyan was the #1 beast king of Tian Fa and her strength was tyrannical, they did not expect her to be at this level. One should know that Hu Menglong's strength was already above the supreme martial artist level. Although his 3 sworn brothers had not reached his level, they were infinitely close to it. Shun Xian was at the 12th level. Every step was like stepping into the heavens. Shun Xian was below the 4th level. Shun Xian was only at the level of an ordinary Shun Xian. Once he reached the 5th level, his strength would take a huge leap, and he would be at the supreme martial artist level. As for Shun Xian, when he reached the 9th level, he would be beyond the supreme martial artist level. He would be at the superior supreme martial artist level. But if he could surpass Shun Xian to the 12th level, he would be at a whole new level, the supreme martial artist level. That was Mei Shuiyan's current level, and this level was infinitely close to the true peak of this world's strength. Life has an end, but martial arts has no end. This sentence was applicable to any world. If a martial arts genius could have an unlimited lifespan, then no one could say what kind of height he would reach. In fact, it did not even need to be a genius. As long as one had a long enough life, anyone could have extremely powerful strength. Unfortunately, the limitations of human lifespan had eliminated this possibility. Hu Menglong roared and leaped up. He sheathed his sword in an instant and spread out his hands. An overwhelming force surged out of his palms. His body changed positions in the air repeatedly. In an instant, the entire sky seemed to be filled with pairs of huge handprints, covering the sky and covering the sun. The handprints swept out in all directions and landed with a loud rumble. He had obviously listened to Ning Wuqing's words. Now is not the time to be a hero. Even if they were to exchange injuries for injuries, as long as they could aggravate Mei Shuiyan's internal injuries, even if it was just a little, it would be extremely helpful to the overall situation today. Chapter 573. When Mei Shuiyan heard Ning Wuqing's words, she couldn't help but laugh mockingly and said, "Ning Wuqing, you're really shameless as a world protector. You're really unscrupulous and unscrupulous. Not only are you ganging up on me and taking turns to fight me, you're even prepared to use your hidden weapons at any time. The Hermitage is really worthy of being a big sect. Your methods are really open and above board. Even your despicable actions are carried out in the open. This venerable is full of admiration for you." As he said this, his body turned nimbly, and he actually dodged the attacks that had no space to dodge. Then, he slashed out 4 times, forcing the 4 powerful enemies back one by one. This sentence caused everyone's faces to turn red with embarrassment. Before these people had entered the Hermitage, any one of them had roamed the pugilistic world unhindered and had always been solitary experts. Now that they had entered the Hermitage, their strength was even greater than before, and their statuses were even more prestigious. But now that they were dealing with their enemies, they actually had to gang up on them and take turns to fight them, and even had to use hidden weapons to greet them. They all felt that they had lost all face. Ning Wuqing snorted coldly and said, "Venerable Mei, you can't hide the truth from me. There's no need to use your shoddy, goading methods. We're here for the sake of the people of the world, so we naturally need to preserve our bodies for the war, for seizing the heavens in the future. If we suddenly lose our lives in your hands while trying to be a hero, that would be a real waste. For the future of the continent, I, Ning Wuqing, have a clear conscience." "What good clear conscience?" Mei Shuiyan let out a long roar and suddenly laughed loudly. "Not bad, not bad. This is indeed the style of the Hermitage. This kind of clear conscience can make people kill people after hearing it. Only then will they have a clear conscience." Before Mei Shuiyan finished her sentence, she swung her long sword in a circle, and a brilliant sword flower shot out in all directions like a blooming peony. Then she swung her sword in a circle again, and another sword flower flew out. Although she was holding a long sword in her hand, in the eyes of the crowd, it was like fireworks. Countless bright and dazzling sword flowers shot out continuously. Hu Menglong and his brothers, who were fighting barehanded, suddenly fell into a difficult situation. They were in a sorry state. Ning Wuqing's shameless words had undoubtedly infuriated Mei Shuiyan, and there was no room for mercy. At this moment, Hu Menglong and his brothers could be said to be suffering in silence. They could only dodge with all their might. In their calculations, since they had already abandoned their swords and used their palms, then how high would the status of Venerable May be? Why would he lower himself and use a sword to deal with an empty-handed opponent? This was a matter of a top-notch powerhouse's dignity and demeanor. If the Venerable May had kept his long sword, then the four of them would have found a chance to fight her head-on. As long as they could fight her head-on, they would win. When one's internal organs were injured, the most important thing was to avoid being shaken. Even if the Venerable May was really uninjured, it would consume a lot of Xian Qi and energy to fight with her palms. The more energy consumed, the more advantageous it would be. But they had miscalculated. They never expected that the four of them would have kept their swords and attacked with their palms. However, Mei Xuyan did not care about the demeanor of a powerhouse. She still relied on the sharpness of her sword to attack fiercely. Not only did she break their palms, but the four of them were also in a dangerous situation. Ning Wuqing was right. If they used weapons, they would not be able to fight her head-on. Mei Xuyan's sword was too sharp and powerful. They were afraid that before they could fight her head-on, their weapons would be broken. How could they fight her head-on? However, although they could fight her head-on with their palms, the opponent was still using a sword. The sword's aura was everywhere. No matter how dense the palms were, they could not withstand the sword's aura. They were in an even more awkward situation. Could he really use his palms of flesh and blood to fight head-on against the divine sword that could cut through iron like mud? Wouldn't that be even more suicidal? They did not know that when Mei Xuyan saw that they had abandoned their swords and used their palms, she had planned to keep her sword as well. However, at this moment, Jun Moxie's voice came into Mei Xuyan's ears. Don't let go of your sword. They know that you are injured. That is a mistake. If you let go of your sword, they will see through you. Why are you still so stupid? They are attacking you without regard for their status, and you are still talking about morality with them. Jun Moxie's voice was really domineering. Mei Xuyan's heart softened. She listened to him obediently and continued to attack with her sword. It was indeed a great advantage. Although it was somewhat out of line with her identity, a sweet smile appeared at the corner of her mouth because of this sentence. Jun Moxie, who was invisible, was even more disdainful. He knew that his opponent had a sword that could cut through gold and jade, but he still chose to use his palms instead. How stupid! What status? What demeanor? Could it be more important than his life? Besides, since hermitage was so shameless, why should he care about the rules of the pugilistic world? I am the rules. Venerable May, you are the lord of Tian Fa. How dare you use a sword to bully an empty-handed person? This is so unfair. I feel ashamed for you. Ning Wuqing was anxious when he saw the situation. He did not expect that Mei Xuyan would be so thick-skinned and continue to use her sword. In his memory, this was not the style of the Venerable May. Ning Wuqing, if you want to be fair, how about a one-on-one duel? Even if you come with 100 people to take turns to fight me, this Venerable will still fight you to the end. Mei Xuyan sneered and said, You still have the face to say the word fair? You only saw that I was using my sword. Why didn't you say that there were 4 of you? Ning Wuqing was speechless. After a while, he said angrily, Venerable May, it seems that you have learned a lot from your little lover. However, young people will regret it one day. If you, the number 1 of Tian Fa, get kicked out of the Jun family and become an abandoned wife, don't blame me for not warning you. He was at his wit's end, but he suddenly used this method in an attempt to infuriate Mei Xuyan and create an opportunity. But he did not know that it was this unforgiving sentence that had truly aroused Mei Xuyan's murderous intent. Despicable. Mei Xuyan's eyebrows were raised, and she shouted. Her sword was like a raging river, and her attacks became even more fierce. Hu Menglong and his brothers could not help but complain, secretly cursing Ning Wuqing's rotten idea. They wanted to take out their swords again, but they did not have the chance. Why did this guy have to provoke her for no reason? He put us in danger for no reason. Ning Wuqing was a little surprised. He watched the fight in the field while paying attention to June Moxie's movements. For someone as experienced and astute as him, how could he ignore any factors that could affect the future? But he still could not figure out why June Moxie had suddenly disappeared. And why did he disappear so abruptly and so mysteriously? In his heart, he could still clearly remember that June Moxie seemed to have become one with his sword and unleashed thousands of sword rays in the air. But it did not hit anyone present. And after that dazzling sword ray disappeared, June Moxie's figure also disappeared. This turn of events was truly strange. And this June Moxie's movement technique seemed to have been taught by his master. He had to reevaluate his evaluation of this kid. And he also had to be careful of sneak attacks from behind. At this time, Hu Menglong howled in grief and indignation. One of his brothers had been ambushed by Mei Shuiyan's marvelous sword aura. A long and deep wound was cut from his shoulder to below his ribs. It was so deep that the bone could be seen. And this was because Mei Shuiyan was worried that she could not expose too much of her strength. So she did not use her full strength. Otherwise, with her real strength, how could Xuanwu, who was not even a supreme martial artist, be spared? Ning Wuqing's expression did not change. Lang ordered, Hu Menglong and the other three retreat. The other group attack. Hu Menglong shouted, I will not retreat. I want to avenge my third brother. Chief Ning, my brother's blood is still here, and it is still steaming. How can I retreat? I will not rest until this hatred is avenged. He could clearly see that his brother's ribs were still gushing with fresh blood. The wound had been completely burst open by the abdominal pressure, and his internal organs had subsequently rushed out. At the edge, the white ribs were broken. It was a ghastly sight to behold. Mei Shuiyan's seemingly gentle slash didn't seem to be fatal at first glance. However, everyone present could see that the seemingly gentle slash contained an immense amount of sword qi. It didn't reveal its sharpness and only erupted after a while. It even directly cut open that person's abdomen, leaving him with no way to save him. Although he wouldn't die immediately with such severe injuries, there was no hope for him to survive. Ning Wuqing scolded coldly, Hu Menglong, I told you to retreat. Hu Menglong roared at the sky. His eyes were bloodshot. He ignored Ning Wuqing's order and rushed forward with a roar. His brother's tragic death had made him lose his mind. He was like a crazy demon. Suddenly, the expert who had his abdomen cut let out a shrill cry. He shouted miserably, Big brother, I will go first. The injured expert knew that he was not far from death and was shocked to see his elder brother taking revenge for him. Disregarding his own life, he attacked the enemy without a care for his own life. His death was imminent, and he could not help but make up his mind. He did not bother to tend to his own injuries and forcefully gathered the remaining Xian Qi in his body. Suddenly, a thick black aura appeared on his body. He howled like a wolf, and without dodging, he pounced towards Mei Shuiyan. He let his intestines hang outside his body and rushed forward. Although his injury was fatal, his strength was close to the level of a supreme martial artist. Now that he was fighting with all his strength, without any regard for his own safety, his power was surprisingly great. Mei Shuiyan's eyes turned cold. With a pu sound, her sword had accurately pierced through that person's heart. But that person did not retreat. He gathered his last breath, widened his eyes, and spread his arms. He rushed forward quickly, as if he wanted to hug Mei Shuiyan. Mei Shuiyan did not dare to be careless. She flew backward, turned around, and gave an invisible kick to his chest. Only then did that person's corpse fly away. The strong Xian energy spread everywhere, and that person's body exploded into a bloody pulp in midair. Chapter 574. Frogs at the bottom of a well. How would you know how vast the heavenly river is? If I don't give you guys a taste of my might, you guys will become more and more daring. Mei Shuiyan laughed coldly, and her eyes flashed. Her body, which was originally in the air, floated up again. She turned around gracefully in midair and with her head down and legs up, she held her sword with both hands instead of one hand. Then, she slashed down with all her might. This strike was truly earth-shattering. Whoa! A sharp howl suddenly rang out. In front of the 7 experts, a silver light wall suddenly appeared. It flickered with cold light and completely condensed into a solid form. Although it was just a simple slash from top to bottom, the range of this slash covered the entire battlefield. At the same time, the 7 experts felt that this sword had a terrifying feeling that there was no way to avoid it. Many of their vital points were covered by this sword. Before the sword light arrived, the sword chi had already hit their faces, making them feel cold. There was no room to retreat. The only way to deal with it was to fight head-on. Only by trading one's life for another's would there be a chance of survival. Such a terrifying ultimate killing move, it was believed that anyone who used it would need to go through the process of accumulating power before they could release it. But in the hands of Mei Shuiyin, this logic was overturned. Just like that, he leaped up and pressed down. This sword had already been casually swung out. How could this not be unexpected? The 7 experts roared at the same time. They gathered all the energy they could muster at this moment and launched a desperate counterattack. Hu Menglong took the lead with his sword and instantly burst forth with all of his strength. Without holding anything back, he rushed towards the silver wall of light. He didn't want to win, he just wanted to perish together with his opponent. He roared crazily and rushed forward with his body and sword. He had left everything in the world behind him. At this moment, there was only revenge in his heart. The sword was like a meteor arriving in a flash. Everyone stared wide-eyed at this earth-shattering strike. They felt as if their souls had been stolen away. This time, it was a real head-on collision. If Venerable Mei really had internal injuries, or even if he wasn't injured, as long as his yuan power had been greatly depleted, then the outcome of the battle must be determined after this strike. Or they could escape, but they had to be prepared for it. They could not afford to fail at the last step. Everyone held their breaths and focused all their attention on the scene. Every possible route that could lead to Mei Shuiyin's escape route was carefully monitored. Bang! Hu Menglong let out a shrill cry. Together with his sword, he was the first to crash into the wall of light formed by the silver sword aura. Pa! 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 With 3 crisp sounds, the sword in Hu Menglong's hand broke into 3 pieces. Then, it turned into iron dust that filled the sky and dissipated. Hu Menglong's body seemed to have been swallowed by a monster. First, his right hand that was holding the sword disappeared. Then his body that was flying in the air started to disappear from his head, shoulders, upper body, waist, legs, and soles of his feet. Bit by bit, it quickly disappeared into nothingness. It was as if there was an incomparably ferocious wild beast in front of him that was slowly swallowing Hu Menglong into its stomach. It was neither fast nor slow, and it was calm and unhurried. Boom! The remaining 6 experts' attacks finally came into contact with Mei Shuiyin's sword aura. Like a sudden clap of thunder, millions of rays of cold light shot out in all directions. At the same time, the 6 experts' bodies were sent flying. Their flesh was torn, and their bodies were bleeding profusely. Their hands were empty. The swords and knives that were in their hands had been turned into nothingness. Blood flowed from their mouths, and they screamed in agony as they fell from the sky. At this moment, they no longer had the demeanor of a powerful expert. They were waving their arms and legs as they fell from the sky. They couldn't even change their positions in the air. This was because all of their energy had been released in that one strike, and they had suffered the strongest rebound. At this moment, it would be difficult for them to even move their little fingers, let alone change their positions in the air to control their fall. As the sword aura faded away, Mei Shuiyin, who had won the battle, staggered backwards. Her snow-white robe was bleeding from 7 to 8 places, like a red plum blossom in the snow. It was eye-catching and shocking. Her complexion turned green and white, then instantly turned pink, and, after changing 3 times, she finally spat out a small mouthful of blood with a wah sound. The 7 experts' attacks had been destroyed by Mei Shuiyin's sword. Puff! Puff, 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 puff. The six figures fell to the ground one after another. The crowd hadn't recovered from a huge shock. They turned their heads around like wooden puppets and saw that the six experts had fallen to the ground and were rolling on the ground. They seemed to have lost control of their bodies. Every roll left a large pool of blood on the snow. Screams and groans could be heard, but three of them only rolled a few times after falling to the ground, and then there was no more sound. He didn't even let out a slight groan. It was obvious that he had died instantly. Some had lost their arms, some had lost their legs. However, those who lost their arms and legs were still alive. Some of them had suffered 7 to 8 sword strikes and had no chance of survival. Tion Fa, Heaven Punishing Sword. Everyone couldn't help but think of this name that was filled with awe and respect. That was the ultimate killing move that the previous lords of Tion Fa used to deal with the strange races in the war for seizing the heavens. For 10,000 years, there had been no exceptions. But today it was finally used on a human. The tyrannical power of this sword caused everyone's hearts to beat wildly. One sword to defeat 7 supreme martial artists. What a terrifying sword. What a peerless sword that could shock the heavens and make the gods weep. This was simply a miracle. And right now, this unbelievable miracle had appeared in front of their eyes. Just as everyone was in shock, suddenly, another silver ray of light, bringing with it the color of blood, shot up into the sky. If Mei Shuiyan's sword was like thunder from the 9 heavens, then this sword was like the summoning of hell. One shook the heavens and the earth, the other was silent. One was like the thunder of spring, the other was like a drizzle. The silver light came from behind them, silently and at a high speed. It was an extremely powerful and shocking sword. Just when everyone's hearts were trembling, filled with fear, and completely defenseless, this sword came out of nowhere. Assassination. It was another assassination. This kind of perfect timing was impossible for anyone who wasn't a top-notch assassin to achieve. One had to know that this sword was aimed at a supreme martial artist expert. But even so, this sword was still able to destroy everything in its path. It was indestructible. Godly sword, blood of yellow flame. The evil monarch of this generation had finally unleashed this mysterious and marvelous sword at this moment. The sword light silently flashed past the waist of an expert, and then came out from the same position of the second expert, bringing along a trail of blood. Then it ruthlessly slashed into the waist of the third expert. The third person finally let out a shrill scream, but the scream was cut off abruptly. He wanted to pull out his sword, and his hand was already on the hilt of his sword. However, when he pulled out his sword and was about to counterattack, he realized that his legs were firmly planted on the ground from his waist down. Only his upper body was flying in the air. He was shocked and panicked. He circulated his Xian Qi with all his might. But when he activated his Xian Qi, he realized that all his internal organs were gushing out from the hole in his lower body. He fell heavily to the ground, but he immediately used his sword to support half of his body and stood up. He was like a wooden stake that was planted flat on the ground. His eyes looked around in panic and hatred, but he didn't see anything. That sword ray had already disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. He wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The only mouthful of blood, because his blood had already flowed out from the hole in his lower body. The pure Xian Qi of the supreme martial artist level temporarily preserved his last bit of Xian Qi. Unfortunately, the rapid loss of his life essence had already caused him to step on the road to the Yellow Springs. He let out a moan that sounded like a sigh, and finally fell to the ground powerlessly. His eyes were wide open like a dead fish, looking at the empty space in front of him, as if he was still puzzled about something. The 2 supreme martial artists who were standing beside him had a strange expression of extreme fear on their faces. They subconsciously touched their waist with their hands, and their faces immediately changed, because they suddenly felt that their stomachs were very comfortable and warm. So warm that they wanted to just fall asleep, sleep until the end of time, and never wake up again. That was a kind of warmth that went deep into their souls. This kind of comfortable feeling would only appear when there was a lot of internal bleeding, when the boiling blood left the blood vessels and flowed into the abdomen, using its own boiling temperature to warm the internal organs of the human body. This kind of extreme comfort was the omen of death. The two of them widened their eyes in fear and lowered their heads in disbelief, looking at their waists. The next moment, the accumulated blood in their abdomen finally broke through the obstruction and suddenly spurted out with a chee-chee sound. The three of them just stood there strangely, but from each of their waists, thin lines of blood continuously spurted out, as if the area around their waists was a fine fountain. Although it was fine, it was strong and powerful, and actually spurted out several feet away on the snowy ground around each of them. There was a neat and round red circle, and in the air, there was a hazy mist of blood that constantly replenished this circle. The source was their bodies. It was a beautiful and strange red circle. It also carried the shadow of death and a terrifying, murderous intent, as if the gates of hell could open at any time. Only then did the two of them scream, and only then did they understand what had happened. They screamed in fear, but did not dare to move, because if they moved, their upper and lower bodies would be separated. But if they did not move, would their upper and lower bodies not be separated? After all, cutting them in half was already an irreversible fact. Brother, you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.